Pirates, get the telekinesis fruit at the start. Chapter 1. The sky is blue and the sun is high. The endless sea looks particularly peaceful and peaceful. The cool breeze creates ripples on the calm sea. Some seagulls fly by from time to time. The whole world seems like a beautiful painting. However, not everyone likes this beautiful scenery. For example, Zhangqi. A small wooden boat is drifting on the sea. The boat looks particularly shabby, with moss all over the hull, and the sail has long become a rag, drifting alone in the wind. A little boy about 6 or 7 years old was lying on it, staring at the seagulls flying in the sky from time to time. He swallowed hard and murmured from time to time. The little boy was naked, with a piece of rag wrapped around his waist to cover his key parts. It seemed that he had been drifting on the sea for too long. A closer look could reveal that the boy's hair was dry, his lips were cracked, and his thin face was a little sunken. "I'm so hungry. Is there anyone to save me? System, Tong Dad, woo woo, are you there? Please stop playing. Save the child. Who can tell me where the hell this is? Woo woo woo." The little boy was originally named Zhangqi. He used to be an ordinary college student who had just graduated on Earth. As for why he was drifting on the sea now, he didn't know what was going on. "I only remember that it was a thunderstorm night 10 days ago, and he was lying on the bed watching anime." Time passed quickly, and it was already early morning before he knew it. He was about to get up and go to the bathroom when he suddenly heard a boom. A white light enveloped his eyes, and then he lost consciousness. When he woke up, he was already lying on this dilapidated boat. After carefully observing the surroundings, he was sure that he had traveled through time. After all, he, a handsome young man in his 20s, suddenly became a little kid of 6 or 7 years old. If it wasn't for time travel, it couldn't be explained at all. And there were some more miscellaneous memories in his mind. An unknown language and the name of this body. Gray Kyle. As for where this place is. What did you do before? I know nothing about it. Kyle was speechless at the time. What the hell is this? How can a time traveler be so miserable? Not to mention knowing nothing, what's more infuriating is that he didn't have any clothes to cover his body, and he stood naked on the boat. It really proves the saying, "You can't bring anything with you when you die." In order to preserve his last dignity, he could only tear off a piece of rag from the sail and tie it around his waist. Although the sky collapsed at the beginning, he quickly calmed down. It was always novel that such a magical thing happened to him. This was the first time he saw such a beautiful sea in person. In his previous life, he knew about the sea from his mobile phone, which always lacked a sense of reality. However, the good times did not last long. Only half a day later, Kyle felt the whip from the sea. It rained heavily in the originally clear sky, and the sea surface was no longer calm. The waves dragged the boat up and down. He felt like he was riding a roller coaster. He also experienced what seasickness was like when he took a boat for the first time. He was also very worried that this tattered boat would fall apart directly. Fortunately, things were not that bad. After the wind and rain, the boat was still strong. At this time, he remembered a very critical problem. There was no food on the boat. He didn't know where he was, how to get ashore, and how to drive this small broken boat. What's more, he is a landlubber. What he saw was the vast sea. It was very dangerous to have no food and fresh water. The boat was full of broken wooden boards. Even if he wanted to fish, he had no tools. He thought for a long time but couldn't find a solution. In the end, he could only pray to God for mercy and let him meet other ships. Fortunately, he still felt that his current body was in very good condition and full of strength. Even his body in his 20s in his previous life was incomparable. With such a physique, he might be able to hold on for a while longer. 10 days passed like this. Kyle had long lost his initial high spirits and now only felt a strong despair. He didn't meet a single ship in 10 days. If it hadn't rained frequently in the past few days, and the rain could replenish the water needed by the body, he would have been cold long ago. He didn't know how he held on. Kyle wanted to drink a sip of seawater now. He was hungry and thirsty, and his voice became hoarse. After thinking about it, he stopped this. Dangerous thoughts. The seawater in front of him can't quench his thirst at all, but will accelerate his death. At this moment, Kyle only felt a blur of consciousness. His body was weakly lying on the bow, his hands drooping in the water, hoping that a fish would bite him, so that he might catch a fish. Even at this point, he did not give up, and there was always a glimmer of hope in his heart. He didn't want to die so aggrieved. After a long time, no fish was hooked. He shook his head helplessly and took his hand out of the seawater. Hey, these cute fish are really not giving face. Kyle, who had been lying for a long time, felt that the wooden board was uncomfortable, and his right hand struggled to support the wooden board at the bow and planned to change his posture. Crack! The broken wooden board supported by his right hand seemed to finally unable to withstand the pressure, and it broke with a click. Because the supported wooden board broke, the body also hit the wooden board directly and heavily due to inertia. He panicked immediately. If the boat is damaged, he will probably die here today. He endured the pain and pulled his hand out of the gap between the broken planks, propped himself up and looked at the small wooden boat. He breathed a sigh of relief after seeing it clearly. Fortunately, only the upper layer of the planks was broken, and there was a mezzanine space below, so the boat would not get water. Suddenly, Kyle seemed to have discovered something, and he struggled to pull the broken planks apart with both hands. When he saw what was underneath, his eyes lit up. There was a cardboard box and a silver-white long sword in the mezzanine of the bow. Kyle couldn't help but murmur in his heart when he looked at the cardboard box. Ah, this, won't it be filled with food? Thinking about it, it seems very likely. After all, it is impossible for him to travel to this place to die. Kyle suddenly felt a little sad. He didn't dare to touch the small wooden boat these days. He was afraid that it would fall apart directly with such a broken degree. Without caring about regret, he directly uncovered the wooden board next to him, and then moved the cardboard box and the long sword to the middle of the boat. After finishing, he was a little dizzy and tired, and hurriedly held the boat to avoid falling. His already weak body became even weaker because of this. But he was very excited in his heart. He ignored the sword that looked very valuable, but stared at the cardboard box tightly, praying silently in his heart that he could have something to eat, no matter what. God, since you let me come to this world, you can't let me die so aggrieved, please. The cardboard box was very ordinary, about the same size as the box for beer in the previous life. But there were no patterns or words. He tore off the tape roughly, and all the things in the cardboard box were poured onto the boat. There were not many things, just two. A small bundle, with a few pamphlets wrapped in plastic paper, and a strange fruit. Kyle was overjoyed. He didn't expect that there was something to eat, even though the fruit looked a little strange. But God gave him a way to survive. He threw the small bag aside. He didn't want to read any books now. He picked up the fruit and bit it, not caring whether it was poisonous or not. He was about to die, so why would he care so much? The fruit looked like a larger peach, but it was white in color with twisted red patterns on it. Sigma_Ka, angle Kyle almost vomited after taking a bite, as if he had taken a bite of durian that tasted like canned herring. But he still forced himself to swallow it down, as his physical condition was no longer picky. He picked up the fruit and swallowed it all in one gulp, suppressing his nausea. After finishing, he fell on the deck with a satisfied expression. It seems that I am not destined to die. Although it tastes a little bad, it is good to have something to eat. Hiss. It hurts tilde. Suddenly, Kyle, who was lying on the deck, felt as if a sledgehammer hit his head. A sharp pain rushed straight to his forehead. The severe pain made cold sweat on his forehead and his eyes bulged. Kyle fainted due to his already weak body and severe headache. He fainted and did not notice a ship in the distance. Chapter 2. A little girl was lying on the fence, looking around, with a smile on her face, waving the wooden sword in her hand and shouting. "Little ones, the captain has ordered us to move forward." All the crew members on the ship smiled at the little girl and echoed, "Yes, Captain Leah." Suddenly, the little girl seemed to have discovered something, and half of her body was out of the fence, looking at the small broken boat in the distance, her big eyes full of curiosity. The middle-aged man next to her was watching the little girl's action, and his heart was pounding. Carefully guarding beside to avoid accidents. "Miss Leah, please be careful, it's very dangerous for you to do this." The little girl named Leah smiled indifferently. "It's okay, Uncle Lawton, look, the boat is so broken. Hey, there seems to be a person lying on it. It seems that he hasn't put on clothes yet. It looks so pitiful. Uncle Lawton, should we go and have a look?" Seeing that Miss Leah didn't listen to his advice, Lawton could only smile helplessly. Lawton did not doubt what Leah said. He took out a monocular telescope from his bosom and looked in the direction the little girl pointed. The most feared thing about sailing on the sea is encountering pirates. You have to observe carefully before making a decision. Many boatmen on the ship also raised their hands to look around, but they saw nothing. They all admired the little girl's eyesight. Lawton observed with the telescope for a long time before finally finding the boat. The little girl said, but it was just a small black dot in his eyes. Unable to figure out the reason, Lawton could only ask the little girl about the details of the boat. After Leah finished her detailed explanation, Lawton stroked his beard and thought for a while. According to Miss Leah's description, the other party should have encountered pirates, and it seems that there is no danger. Lawton did not make a decision. He was just a guard on the ship. It was not his concern whether to save or not. He wanted to report to the cabin, but seeing the little girl lying on the fence, he gave up the idea of leaving alone. He was worried about leaving the other party alone here. He waved to a crew member not far away and said, "Go ask Mrs. Anna for her opinion." The man nodded, turned around and left, and he also understood the whole process. Soon a young woman walked out of the room, followed by a little girl holding a book and looking a little quiet. Behind her was a girl dressed in a maid costume following closely. When Leah saw the person coming, she quickly jumped off the fence and ran over and threw herself into the arms of the young woman. "Mom, that person over there is so pitiful. Uncle Lawton said that person met a pirate. Let's help him." Lawton also told the woman what happened just now. After listening to Lawton's story, the young woman sighed. "What a poor child, just listen to Leah and go help that child." Lawton nodded and asked the helmsman to change direction. With her mother's consent, Leah jumped up happily. "Great." The young woman touched Leah's little head lovingly. 2 days passed in a flash. Hongye Village. Located on a remote island in the East China Sea. There are many red maple trees growing on the island, and red leaves can be seen all year round. Therefore, the island is named Maple Leaf Island. In a large manor by the sea to the north of Hongye Village. Kyle, who had been in a coma for 2 days, woke up slowly in bed. Looking at the unfamiliar room in front of him, rubbing his still aching head and looking around. The big chandelier above the head, the gorgeous and exquisite furniture, a completely European-style room. On the table next to it, there are familiar bundles and the silver sword. Where is this? Kyle, who just woke up, is still a little confused and doesn't know where he is now. Looking at the pajamas he was wearing, there are still traces of washing on his body, thinking that he was rescued. At this time, he remembered the fruit he ate before he fell into a coma, and a magical message also appeared in his mind. Superhuman telekinetic fruit, is this a devil fruit? With the extra information in his mind, Kyle was shocked to find that this was actually a devil fruit. He also knew the power of this devil fruit. It can use telekinesis to control all objects of perception. Oh my god, am I in the world of One Piece? Kyle tried to slowly stretch out his right hand towards the long sword on the table. The long sword seemed to be pulled by something and slowly floated up. Kyle was overjoyed to see this. Fuck, is this the power of the devil fruit? I really came to the world of One Piece. After all, the devil fruit is only in the world of One Piece. Perhaps because of the excitement, Pia the floating longsword was also affected, trembling for a while, and then flew towards Kyle at a speed that was completely invisible. Ouch. Fuck. With a thud, the longsword hit him straight, and Kyle was directly hit against the wall behind because of the impact. Fortunately, no other furniture was damaged. Kyle also lost control of the long sword because of the sudden impact. After a while, Kyle got up from the ground holding the sword, rubbing his lower back with a grin. He looked at the long sword in his arms with lingering fear. Fortunately, it hit him directly. If it had been inserted straight, he didn't dare to think about what the consequences would be. However, his face was full of smiles, and the corners of his mouth curled up and he laughed foolishly. Ha ha ha, I didn't expect it to be a devil fruit. The smile on his face disappeared in an instant, frowned and began to ponder, feeling a little worried. This is the world of One Piece. You may think it's pretty good when watching anime in your previous life, but that's from the perspective of the protagonist group. Kyle now doesn't think this is a good place. In this world where the strong prey on the weak and personal power is supreme, pirates are everywhere, and those powerful people will not care about the life and death of a rookie like him. Although he now has the power of the devil fruit, he is just a little scum compared to those big guys. Don't think about it so much, the most important thing now is to understand what this place is, and then make plans slowly in the future. Dong dong dong. It seems that Kyle's movement just now startled the people outside, and there was a knock on the door. A soft female voice sounded, and she seemed to be young. Hello, what happened? Is there anything I can help you with? Kyle was startled, and then he remembered that he was still in someone else's house. He would not be considered as vandalism by others for making such a big noise. He hurriedly explained, sorry, I accidentally fell just now. He didn't care whether others believed it or not. After tidying up the room that he had messed up, Kyle pushed the door and walked out. A maid-dressed woman stood quietly outside the door. Seeing Kyle coming out, she smiled and said, "You're awake. My name is Sophia, and I'm the maid here." Sophia was about a dozen years old, wearing a maid outfit, with black hair tied behind her head and a pair of black bear ears on her head. I don't know if it's real or just a decoration. Chapter 3. Kyle smiled apologetically. Sorry, I made some noise by accident. Sophia shook her head to indicate that it was okay, and said with a gentle smile, I'll take you to see Mrs. Anna first. Kyle nodded and followed behind. Mrs. Anna mentioned by the maid should be the owner here. He also wanted to visit the owner here first. On the way, Kyle asked, Hello, beautiful sister, my name is Kyle, thank you for saving me, can I ask where this is? The little maid seemed very happy to be praised for her beauty by a 6-year-old child, and she also had some good feelings for Kyle who was so polite. Sophia said gently, This is Hongye village, and the one who saved you was Mrs. Anna, the hostess here, but you were really dangerous at that time. I heard from Uncle Loden that you were almost dead at that time. Fortunately, you met Mrs. Anna. Kyle listened carefully. Sophia was very curious about Kyle's affairs. Speaking of which, little Kyle, did you encounter pirates? How did you become so embarrassed? Do you remember where your home is? Kyle didn't know how to explain for a moment. After thinking for a while, he said, I don't remember where my home is. I only remember that I drifted alone on the sea for 10 days. At that time, my parents stopped the pirates and let me escape alone. They may have, woo-woo. As he spoke, he couldn't help but shed tears. Of course, it was not because of the story he told, but because he was happy to survive. But Sophia didn't know this. She just thought he was sad because of his parents' departure and what happened at sea. Then she looked at Kyle with some heartache, and her eyes turned red. She stroked Kyle's head in a comforting way. Sorry, Kyle, I'm rude. I didn't expect you to have such an experience. Looking at the big sister in front of him with red eyes, Kyle felt a little guilty. He felt guilty for deceiving such a kind maid, and his expression was unnatural. In order to avoid asking too many questions and making the explanation unclear, Kyle could only change the subject and said, "It's okay, Sister Sophia, I have to thank you for saving me. I must thank Mrs. Anna later." Sophia saw that Kyle's expression was unnatural and thought that he might be nervous because he was going to meet the owner of this place. "Don't be nervous, little Kyle. Mrs. Anna is a very nice person. But speaking of it, you have to thank Miss Leah. Strictly speaking, it was she who saved you. If she hadn't seen you from a distance, no one would have known." Kyle looked at the maid with some doubts. At this time, two little girls who were only 5 or 6 years old chased in the corridor. "Luli, you guy, you actually told Mom that I lost my homework, you stop right there." "Leah, I'm your sister, it's my job to supervise you to do your homework." The two little girls who were playing stopped when they saw Sophia and Kyle, and looked at the unfamiliar Kyle curiously. Kyle also looked at the two cute little Lolita. Tisk tisk. It is worthy of being called the pirate world. There were no such cute little girls in the world before. They are just like two little angels. The girl in front has blonde hair and is holding a book in her hand. The girl behind has black hair and a pair of big eyes that keeps looking at Kyle. When she meets Kyle's sight, her little face turns red. A figure covered by only rags keeps appearing in her mind. She quickly hides behind her sister. Kyle was stunned. What's wrong with this little girl? Why is she blushing when she sees herself? Am I beautiful now? She touched her face uncertainly. Sophia introduced, "The one in front is Miss Luli, and the one behind is Miss Leah, who saved you. They are both daughters of Mrs. Anna." Kyle nodded and bowed. "Hello, my name is Kyle." Luli looked at Kyle and smiled sweetly. "Hello, my name is Luli." She pulled the girl behind her out and said, "This is my sister, her name is Leah." Looking at Leah with a blushing face, Kyle scratched his head and then bowed seriously. "Thank you for saving my life, Miss Leah." Leah, who was pulled out by her sister, lowered her head and dared not look at Kyle, stammering, "No, it's okay, I. As she spoke, her face became redder and redder. Luli and Sophia looked at Leah in confusion, not understanding what happened to Leah, who was usually carefree. As the elder sister, Luli could only say to Kyle, "I'm sorry, Leah was a little rude." Kyle waved his hand. "It's okay, I disturbed you too. You are going to see your mother, I'll bring you guys, go ahead." "No need, Sister Sophia will take me there." "It's okay, we don't have anything to do anyway, I'll take you there." Seeing Luli's enthusiasm, Kyle couldn't refuse. "Then thank you." "It's okay." After saying that, he took Kyle to the direction of the study. Along the way, the two little girls curiously asked Kyle all kinds of questions, and were very curious about the outside world. Kyle also seriously narrated his just made-up experience. After listening, the two little girls cried and said that Kyle would live here in the future. Sophia also introduced some things here to Kyle, and Kyle also learned some specific information about where he was. He is now in the East China Sea, a small island near the kingdom of Oiko. And now the time is the Haiyuan calendar, October 15, 1497. Kyle's heart was pounding as he walked on the road. This was bad luck. He vaguely remembered that the pirate King Roger was beheaded in 1498 of the Sea Circle calendar. So the Great Pirate Era will begin in less than a year. He didn't know how far this Maple Leaf Island was from Rogue Town. He had never heard of this place in his previous life. Of course, Kyle didn't want to watch the scene of Roger's execution, although that scene was quite historically significant. He was only a 6-year-old child now. What Kyle cared about was that Roger was a lot of powerful people gathered in the East China Sea during the execution. Like Doflamingo, Gecko Mariah, Hawkeye, Mahawk, Crocodile, Buggy, Red Hare, Shanks, Dragon, etc. Not to mention some other characters that have not been mentioned. Although the Navy will also dispatch a large number of people, it can't take care of all of them. There are always some stubborn people who like to commit crimes against the wind. And next year will be the time for Roger's execution. I don't know how chaotic the East China Sea will be at that time. I hope it won't affect this island. But the good news is that he is now in the East Sea. The chaos is probably only in the past few years. As the hometown of the Navy hero, Garp, this sea area, which was later called the Weakest Sea, occasionally encounters some pirates. However, compared with other sea areas, the Grand Line and the New World, the East Sea is a relatively safe place. Kyle was a little worried along the way, and the three of them thought he was sad because of bad memories. They all spoke to comfort him. The study was on the second floor, and it didn't take too much time to get there. The two sisters pushed the door and walked in. "Mom, the big brother is awake." Seeing this, Kyle followed behind, and Sophia stayed outside the door. Chapter 4. As soon as Kyle entered the room, he saw a young and beautiful woman sitting at a desk in front of the window, holding several pieces of paper and thinking with her head down. She had a beautiful face, a figure that was completely unfit for ergonomics, and silver gray hair that shone slightly in the sun. Seeing her daughter rushing over, the woman smiled gently, put down the things in her hands, and held the two little ones in her arms. Then she noticed Kyle coming in from behind, and said in a gentle voice, "How do you feel? Are you feeling better? The doctor said that you would need at least 5 days to wake up because you were too weak, but I didn't expect you to wake up in 2 days." The woman in front of him had a nice voice, which made people feel like they were in the spring breeze, and she seemed to be easy to get along with. Kyle unconsciously relaxed his nervous mood and smiled warmly. "Thank you for your concern. I feel much better now. Thank you for saving me. I thought I was completely finished at that time. I didn't expect to meet a kind-hearted big sister like you." Anna shook her head indifferently, but she thought Kyle's words were interesting. "You don't have to care. We just met by chance." Looking at Kyle curiously, the little boy in front of her gave her a sense of maturity that she shouldn't have at this age, and he was very polite, which made her like him very much. At this time, Leah in her arms said excitedly, "Mom, you don't know, he is so pitiful." Then she talked about the experience that Kyle told her. After listening, Anna looked at Kyle with love in her eyes. In her heart, she also understood why he was so sensible at such a young age. She couldn't help but step forward and hug Kyle in her arms. "Poor kid, stay here from now on. We will be your family from now on. Just forget the bad memories in the past." Kyle is a little embarrassed, a little unnatural, and a little excited now. Wow, what a broad mind. He sighed in his heart that this is worthy of being the world of one piece. At this moment, he wanted to slap himself twice. Although his body is only 6 years old now, his actual age is not. He quickly abandoned the distracting thoughts in his heart. He must not leave a bad impression on others at this time. He buried his head in the broad chest and struggled in a rough voice. "Mrs. Anna, this is not good." Hearing that Kyle's voice was wrong, Anna quickly let him go. Kyle, who left the embrace, breathed quickly. Anna chuckled and said, "Sorry, I got excited for a moment." "And there's nothing wrong with it. You can't do anything outside at your age now. Why don't you stay here? I see that you are about the same age as my daughters, and they just need playmates." Leah on the side also nodded in agreement. Okay, it's so boring at ordinary times. Kyle, you can just play with us." Feeling the sincere kindness of everyone towards him, Kyle was touched and smiled sincerely. Bowed deeply. "Sorry to bother you, please take care of me in the future." After that, Sophia took Kyle to get familiar with this place, and the accommodation was arranged in the room where he lived before. Kyle, who returned to the room, first took a comfortable hot bath. Looking at the boy in the mirror, he was about 1.3 meters tall, with short black hair, and a somewhat immature face with a sense of thinness due to lack of nutrition. I wanted to try the power of the devil fruit, but finally gave up this dangerous idea. It would be bad if I broke any furniture. Anyway, there is still a long time in the future, so there is no need to rush. Then he lay on the bed, feeling mixed emotions. There was reluctance to the previous life, feeling touched by these kind people, and being confused about the future life. He also began to think about his future plans. He couldn't stay here forever. Of course, joining the Navy is the best choice for ordinary people. With fame and power, 5 social insurances and 1 housing fund, and backed by the world government, the conditions can be said to be quite generous. After thinking about it, Kyle still didn't plan to join the Navy. Not only did he have to fight with pirates on weekdays, but he also had to help Bubble Dragon do some shameful things occasionally. He had to fight for an order, and he might die in a battle before he grew up. As for pirates, Kyle directly ruled them out. Although he was not a good person, he was not a bad person either. Although there were some good people among the pirates, they were only a small part after all, and most of the others were evil people who burned, killed, robbed and abused. As long as the pirate flag is hung, the power of these villains will be increased invisibly. In the end, in Kyle's mind, there is not much difference between the Navy and the pirates. They are both good and bad. After thinking about it, Kyle decided to improve his strength on this island first, at least to have some self-protection power, and the future will come later. Let's talk about it later. And he prefers to hide a little, and develop in a sluggish way before he has the strength. This world is not as harmonious as in the previous life, and perhaps one careless move could put his life in danger. Kyle does not have big dreams. He has no interest in the so-called One Piece, etc. As for changing this deformed world, just go to bed, he is just an ordinary person, and he will change it with his head. When he came to this world, he just wanted to live hard, and then go see this brand new world. The only comfort is that he now has the ability of the devil fruit, although it is not the thunder fruit he wants most. But the telekinesis fruit is not bad, and it may not be worse than the thunder fruit after it is developed. Suddenly he remembered that there were several booklets when he found the devil fruit, and he didn't have time to read them at that time. Although he didn't know what it was, it should not be an ordinary thing to be put together with the devil fruit. Thinking of this, he walked to the table and opened the small package. The 3 booklets wrapped in plastic envelopes lay quietly on the table. Kyle opened them all, and when he saw the title, he was stunned, and then overjoyed. Picked up one of the books. 3000 Sword Techniques. Slowly opened it. Each page had a pattern and a matching text explanation. It recorded various sword techniques, including knife techniques. Kyle obviously couldn't understand it. After all, he didn't know what sword techniques were, but he still knew that the things recorded in it were very valuable. Becoming a great swordsman is the dream of many One Piece fans. It's called 3000, but in fact there are only more than 10 pages, all of which are some basic sword techniques. Then look at the other booklets. Physical techniques, from beginners to death. Haki quick teaching method, 3 years to begin, 5 years to master, 10 years to become a great master. As Kyle flipped through the pages one by one, the smile on his face gradually became more arrogant. The physical technique explains a lot of body training methods and techniques, and even the Navy 6 styles are explained in detail. As for the book about hockey, the content inside made Kyle very happy. The training methods of armament hockey and observation hockey have made extremely detailed training plans. As for the title of the book, 3 years to get started, 5 years to master, and 10 years to become a great master, Kyle didn't pay much attention to it. After all, the training of hockey depends not only on aptitude and effort, but more importantly, physical fitness must keep up. He is only 6 years old now, and I think he doesn't have the conditions to awaken armament hockey. Maybe observation hockey can still be tried. There is no content about conqueror hockey in the book, and it is known that this thing cannot be learned by learning. Conqueror Haki cannot be acquired through acquired learning, this thing belongs to innate aptitude. Before awakening, no one knows whether they have the aptitude of Conqueror Haki. Kyle feels that he is just an ordinary person. Just learn Armament Haki and Observation Haki, but don't count on Conqueror Haki. After flipping through it for a while, Kyle was satisfied and wrapped it all in cloth, and then put it in his arms. This thing is very important to him, he can't lose it. Knock, knock, knock. At this time, there was a knock on the door. Kyle got up and opened the door, only to see Sophia standing outside the door, with an apron tied around her waist. Little Kyle, I think you must be hungry too. Mrs. Anna asked me to prepare some food for you. Kyle's stomach growled when he heard about food. Previously, because of various information, he completely ignored hunger, and now he only felt hungry when he heard about food. Thank you very much, and thank you Mrs. Anna. Sophia also heard the slight rumbling of Kyle's stomach, and couldn't help but chuckle. Chapter 5. I took Kyle all the way to the restaurant. A lot of food had already been placed on the table, including vegetables, meat, fruits, etc., and the variety was quite complete. As if welcoming a new member of the family, the prepared food was particularly rich. Anna and her 2 daughters were sitting at the table, leisurely eating snacks. Anna waved her hand and said, "Come on, Kyle, you must be starving. I hope you like these foods." After a few people greeted each other, Kyle did not hold back and started to eat heartily. The food here tasted very good. I don't know if it was the raw materials or the cooking method. It was the first time for Kyle to eat such delicious food. At first, the 3 of them didn't pay much attention until they saw the empty plates on the table piled up higher and higher. What's more amazing is that the depression on Kyle's face caused by hunger is also slowly recovering, and soon he becomes no different from a normal person. Kyle didn't know what had happened to his body, but just kept putting the food in front of him into his mouth. Anna and the others looked at him in shock, as if they were looking at some rare species. Seeing that the food on the table was decreasing rapidly, Sophia quickly asked the chef to make more. After a brief shock, Anna regained her calm expression. Having been a merchant on the sea for many years, she had met all kinds of people. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, Kyle felt a little embarrassed. He didn't expect that his body could eat so much now. He was grumbling in his heart. Wouldn't they think I was too good at eating and kick me out? He coughed and apologized, "Sorry, I ate too much." Anna smiled indifferently, "It's okay, our family is not short of food, just eat it, if it's not enough, I'll ask the chef to make more." Kyle waved his hand to indicate that he didn't need it, and he had almost eaten it at this time. Although others didn't care, he couldn't be too exaggerated. Leah couldn't help but step forward and touch Kyle's face and said, "You are not a monster." Kyle raised his head in confusion. Leah didn't explain, and took out a mirror from somewhere and pointed it at him. "Look for yourself." At first, Kyle was also very confused about what this girl was doing, but when he saw his face in the mirror, he instantly lost his composure. He is no longer as thin as before, his face is ruddy and his eyes are bright. If you don't see it with your own eyes, no one would believe that the boy in front of him was still thin and malnourished not long ago. Luli was also curious, but she was concerned about Kyle, who was about the same age as them, and could actually eat so much food. How did such a small stomach hold it? Her personality is very similar to Anna, gentle and calm. Unlike Leah, she is also curious, but she didn't try it. Looking at the changes in himself in the mirror, Kyle suddenly had a bold guess, remembering that King Luffy in the original book seemed to have such a skill. It seems to be called Life Return. But his current performance is not so outrageous, and he just restores his malnourished body. After a brief shock, everyone returned to normal and started chatting while drinking tea. Kyle also learned a lot about this family from Anna. Simply put, Anna's family is a sea merchant, with farms, orchards, etc. In this place where there is more ocean than land, and most islands are scattered. Some small islands are not very large, and the self-produced materials are limited, so they need to be purchased from other islands. But not everyone has the ability to go to other islands. The weather at sea, pirates, and some sea beasts in the sea are factors that ordinary people find difficult to deal with. Many sea merchants were born from this. And Anna's family is one of them. From time to time, they will take various goods to nearby islands for sale. Every time they go out to sea to escort, there are also some capable young people in the village. Inadvertently, Anna also mentioned some information about the male owner here, that is, her husband, the father of Luli and Leah. Some years ago, he abandoned their wife and daughter for some reason and went to sea to become a pirate. As for the reason, Anna did not say. Kyle was quite speechless about this, which reminded him of Usopp's father, Jesus. He also abandoned his wife and children to go to sea to become a pirate. Looking at the beautiful woman and two cute girls in front of him, Kyle was very confused about what these people were thinking. Leaving such a beautiful wife and lovely daughter, what's the point of going to be a pirate, sleeping in the open air, fighting and killing all day long? What's the point? Maybe Kyle doesn't understand the so-called romance of men. With a gloomy face, he secretly cursed the other party for being a piece of shit. It seems that because of this the topic was a bit sensitive, and the mood of several people was a bit low. Leah had a bad temper, wrinkled her nose and said viciously, "HMPH, when I grow up, I will go to sea, and then beat that man and bring him back, and ask him why he abandoned his mother." Anna rubbed Leah's little head, with a doting face. Kyle didn't know what to say. After all, it was someone else's family matter, and he couldn't comment. He could only comfort Anna to relax, and the two daughters were also very well behaved. Anna smiled and said that she didn't care anymore. In order to change the subject, Anna looked at Kyle and said, "Kyle, you just came here. Let Luli and Leah take you around in a while. It can be regarded as a little more understanding. Hongye village is still very beautiful." Kyle nodded in agreement. He also wanted to see this island where he would live for a long time in the future. Just in time to digest the food. Luli and Leah were also very enthusiastic, and pulled Kyle out of the villa. As soon as the three people walked out of the villa, they saw a middle-aged uncle with a beard. He was dressed simply, nearly 2 meters tall, and his strong muscles could be seen even with clothes on. He wore black framed glasses on his eye sockets, which was very inconsistent with his burly figure. The first impression he gave was that he was not easy to mess with. "Miss Luli, Miss Leah, are you going out to play? Do you need me to protect you?" The two women greeted each other politely. "Hello, Uncle Lawton, we are just walking around, there is no need for protection." Kyle also looked up and greeted Lawton in a proper manner. "Hello, Uncle, my name is Kyle." Lawton looked down at Kyle and noticed the changes in his body. "Hello, little Kyle, are you feeling better?" Kyle was a little panicked at the moment, looking up at the fierce-looking uncle, feeling very stressed. The main reason is that he is only 1.3 meters tall now, which is about the same height as Lawton's legs. You can imagine how much pressure Lawton, who is nearly 3 meters tall, brings. "I feel much better, thank you for your concern." Seeing this scene, Luli chuckled and patted Kyle on the shoulder and said, "Don't be afraid, Uncle Lawton is a very gentle person. You will know when you get to know him in the future." Lawton touched Kyle's head with his big hand and laughed. "Don't be afraid, little guy. I think your physical qualifications seem to be very good. Do you want to learn physical skills from me?" Lawton did not lie. When he just rescued Kyle, he checked his body and found that this kid had an exceptionally good physique. He was born to practice. If he practices seriously, his future achievements will definitely be much higher than his. And this kid's recovery ability seems to be exceptionally amazing. So when they met this time, he wanted Kyle to learn from him, hoping that he would have enough strength to protect his family in the future. Before Kyle could respond, Luli and Leah, who were standing next to him, seemed to have heard something horrible and pulled Kyle away. "Uncle Loden, we're going to play first. See you later." Chapter 6. Kyle was dragged by the two little girls and could only shout, "Thank you, I'll consider it." After running for a long time, the three of them stopped, and the two girls sat on the stone steps panting. Kyle didn't understand. "What's wrong?" Leah panted. "Hutilda, Kyle, you don't know how scary it is to learn physical skills from Uncle Loden." As if she remembered something bad, a frightened expression appeared on her little face. Luli also nodded in agreement. Uncle Loden is usually a gentle person, but once he starts teaching, the whole person becomes so scary. He has to get up at 5 o'clock every day, and if he doesn't train enough, he will punish you with a stick. Originally, I thought they were afraid of Loden because he was difficult to get along with, but it turned out to be due to the children's fear of teachers. Looking at the frightened expressions of the two little girls, Kyle couldn't help laughing. "Hearing what you said, Uncle Loden seems to be very powerful." Leah showed an admiring look and said excitedly, "Uncle Loden is indeed very powerful. He used to be a navy. Every time the village encountered pirates, Uncle Loden led people to drive them away." Kyle understood that as merchants, Anna's family could not avoid going out to sea. If there was no powerful person to protect them, they would have been robbed by the pirates long ago. After all, the navy could not follow behind to protect them at all times. It seems that Uncle Loden is a very powerful person. Leah seemed very proud, standing on the stone steps with her hands on her waist and her head held high. "Of course, I will become a strong man like Uncle Loden in the future and beat down all the bad guys." Kyle couldn't help but smile at Leah's appearance. This girl seemed to be a bit jealous and violent. He did not laugh at her, but encouraged her, "Then come on, Leah. It's very tiring to be a strong person." "Of course, I'm not afraid of being tired." Leah was a little arrogant. As if she had thought of something, Leah came up and asked, "Kyle, I remember you seemed to be carrying a sword at that time. Do you know swordsmanship?" Do you want to learn swordsmanship?" Kyle remembered the sword in the novice gift pack, but according to his understanding, few people in the One Piece world seem to use double-edged swords. There are even fewer famous double-edged swords. Most of them use long swords, but there is no difference between using swords or knives here. "Of course, I see they are so handsome with swords, and it hurts to hit people with fists." As she said this, Leah gently punched the stone slab with her fist. Kyle was speechless for a while. "So you want to learn swordsmanship because you are afraid of pain? I thought you wanted to become a powerful female swordsman like Kuina." Leah was very unconvinced. It's normal to be afraid of pain. But becoming a powerful female swordsman is good. I've decided that I will become a powerful female swordsman in the future, and the strongest one. As for who Kuina is, she didn't ask. It's probably Kyle's friend in the past. Kyle sighed that she was really a child, and she thought about it. As if she had thought of a good idea, Kyle looked at Leah with a malicious smile. "Your dream is very good. It happens that I do know swordsmanship. I will teach you swordsmanship in the future, and strive to make you the strongest female swordsman in the world as soon as possible." Although he doesn't know swordsmanship, he has 3,000 swordsmanships. It's always right to teach according to the content of the book. Leah jumped up excitedly, hugged Kyle and said excitedly, "Then we have a deal, you can't lie to me." Okay. Kyle rubbed her hair and agreed. "But it looks like he is coaxing an ignorant little girl." "Then what is your dream, Kyle?" Leah asked curiously. "My dream." Kyle didn't know what to say for a moment. "It seems I don't have one yet." To be honest, he really doesn't have any dreams right now. Now he just wants to practice hard and become stronger. "How can I not have one?" Leah was puzzled. "My current dream is to become a powerful swordsman, and my sister's dream is to become the best doctor in the world. Mom said everyone has a dream." Kyle pondered for a while and said, "Well, I want to see this sea, and in the future I will have my own boat and go to sea with my friends, eat different food and see different people and things. Leah clapped her hands and said excitedly. That's great, I also want to go to sea to play, then you can be my crew member, and we will go on adventures together. Then you have to work hard, you can't be a captain without strength. HMPH, Kyle, don't underestimate me, I will definitely be better than you in the future. The little girl put her hands on her waist and was full of confidence. Anna's villa is built on a slightly higher ground. You can see the scenery of half of the island as soon as you walk out of the gate. Red maple trees can be seen everywhere, and some houses are built sparsely. It was just after 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The sun was setting on the seashore, the afterglow of the sunset was sprinkled on the earth, and the cool sea breeze blew gently. Sunset, breeze, red island, orange sea. There are many fishing boats docked at the port. At this time, the villagers are busy collecting fishing nets and counting the day's harvest. What a beautiful scenery. The three of them strolled around talking and laughing. Breathing the fresh air that is completely unpolluted, Kyle felt a lot better, closing his eyes and feeling the sea breeze. Maple Leaf Island is not large, only a few kilometers in area, but the village seems quite lively. There are vendors, restaurants, shops, etc., like a small city. The villagers basically all knew Luli and Leah, and most of them would greet them warmly when they met them on the road, and some would even give them some snacks and fruits. Most of them would also ask about Kyle, a stranger, but when they heard that he was the new member of Anna's family, they would also be very enthusiastic. Kyle also gained a lot along the way. Kyle asked curiously, "Is your family so famous here?" Luli held a book in her left hand and an ice cream in her right hand, and corrected Kyle, "Kyle, you are also a member of the family now, don't make any mistakes in the future." Leah held the snacks and said vaguely, "Sister is right, we will all be a family in the future." Although she said so, Luli still explained. "My mother told me that the village was very poor before, and a lot of taxes were paid to the country every year. Most people could only barely support themselves. Some people who really couldn't pay the taxes either starved to death or became pirates. In the end, our family came here and helped clean up some pirates here, and took the villagers to sell the things they planted and raised to other islands, and the village gradually became rich." "I see," Kyle nodded to show that he understood. The life of ordinary people in this world is indeed very difficult. Not only did they have to face the harassment of pirates, but they also have to bear high amounts of Tianshengjian. Just like the place where Nami lives, Kokoja village. Belmer retired as a marine and had his own orange orchard, but he lived a very tight life. Many of the clothes Nami wore when she was a child were replaced by Nokigo. In the end, Belmer was killed by the fishman Arlong because he could not afford 100,000 Baileys. In the previous life, when watching anime, most people only saw the freedom of pirates and the freedom on the sea. Few people would pay attention to the lives of ordinary people, things that were once a few strokes on paper or real here. Kyle also understood why the villagers here were so friendly to Anna's family. Even after learning that he was a member of their family, they treated him warmly. Chapter 7. The three of them were strolling around while eating snacks, and before they knew it, they came to a hill on the west side of the island. The hill was covered with thick red maple trees, and the fallen leaves covered the entire hill. The direction of the villa was on the other side of the forest, and the few people did not walk too far. As they walked, Leah excitedly said, "There are many wild animals in the mountains. Sophia used to bring me and my sister here to catch them for barbecue. The taste is super delicious." She smacked her lips as if she was savoring it. "Oh," Kyle asked curiously, "are there any powerful beasts in the mountains? Is it dangerous for us to come here?" Kyle is not a child. He didn't think about eating, but grasped the key point. If this guy encounters a wild animal, he has no confidence to ensure the safety of the two. Leah waved her hand indifferently. "Don't worry, Kyle, the powerful beasts are basically deep in the mountains and forests, and there are only some rabbits, squirrels and the like outside." "That's good." Kyle was relieved. In the future, when he becomes stronger, he may go deeper and hunt some beasts. Eating more beast meat should also improve his physical fitness. Kyle, who was walking slowly, was suddenly stunned and looked at Leah and said, "Who did you say brought you to catch beasts?" Leah didn't understand and looked at Kyle in confusion. "Sophia, what's wrong? Is it the maid Sophia at home?" "Yes." Kyle was stunned. It turned out that he didn't hear wrong. He was confused. That maid looked weak and weak. How could she have the strength to catch beasts? This girl couldn't be bragging. No, there was no need to lie to herself about this kind of thing. Could it be that Sophia was a hidden master who usually dressed as a maid? Come to think of it, how can Anna's family have such a great influence in Hongye village, own such a large manor, and the merchant ships going out to sea are still dominated by her family? If it depends on Lorden and the people in the village alone, it is obviously impossible. Although Lorden seems to be very friendly to Anna's family, and so are the people in the village, the human heart cannot stand the test, and Anna's family probably understands this. Nothing has happened for so many years, obviously because Anna's family has the ability to prevent all this. Luli looked at Kyle's changing expression and didn't understand what he was thinking. "Kyle, you probably don't know that Sophia is very powerful. Those wild monsters in the mountains can be easily solved by her." "Yes, Sophia is even more powerful than Uncle Lorden. I thought you knew it," Leah also said seriously. Hiss. No wonder. Kyle understood immediately. However, at this moment, Leah, who was walking in front, seemed to step on air and her body suddenly fell down. "Ah!" A scream came out instantly. The leaves around Leah also collapsed, and finally formed a pit. Kyle was also startled, and subconsciously tried to grab the other party, but there was a distance between the two, and his hands could not reach. Luli also reacted and ran over in a hurry. But when she ran to the pit, she saw a magical scene. Leah did not fall into the pit, but half of her body was suspended in the pit, as if there was a magical force holding her up and not letting her fall. Luli covered her mouth, her eyes widened, and she looked at Leah with disbelief, and then looked at Kyle who raised his right hand. It seemed that she understood something. Then she saw that the magical force took Leah away from the pit, and then slowly put her on the ground. Leah closed her eyes tightly at this moment, and waved her hands at a loss. After a while, she found that her body was not painful, so she opened her eyes and looked around curiously. Didn't I fall into a pit? What happened?" Leah was confused. Luli, who was standing by, was also confused, not knowing what happened. He quickly ran up to look at Leah, touched her left and right, and found that she was fine, so he patted his chest with a face full of fear. Luli looked at Kyle in surprise and said, "Kyle, you just saved Leah, right?" Leah hadn't reacted yet, and looked at Luli as if asking. Luli then told her everything that had just happened. Then Leah was also surprised. "Kyle, how did you do it?" Kyle was a little embarrassed to be looked at, put down his right hand, and said without hiding, "Ahem. Actually, it's nothing. I don't know if you have heard of the devil fruit. It is estimated that she will live on this island for a long time, and there is no need to hide such things. They are not fools, and they will find out sooner or later anyway. It is better to be honest at the beginning, which can also increase their favorability." Luli didn't understand why. Although she studied very hard, there is no introduction to devil fruit in what they learn. And Leah screamed loudly, "Devil fruit! Could it be the legendary fruit that can give people devil power after eating it?" What she likes most is some strange things on the sea. Loden told her about devil fruit before, but she didn't expect to see a devil fruit user with her own eyes today. Luli looked at her sister in confusion. Leah looked like a little adult, with her hands behind her back. She could tell her sister what she didn't understand. Just thinking about it made her feel very accomplished. Cleared her throat and said, "Ahem, then let teacher Leah tell you." Leah said that there are some magical fruits on the sea. They look different. Each fruit will host a devil. This is the devil fruit. Some of these demons will choose a suitable host. As long as someone eats the devil fruit, he will have the power of the devil. Some will use fire, and some will use thunder. How magical! Luli exclaimed. She didn't expect that there is such a magical power in the world. Then what is your ability, Kyle? Kyle affirmed Leah's explanation. He didn't expect that this girl actually knew so much. My ability is to control the objects around me. I just used my ability to save Leah. He then pointed his right hand at Luli and began to demonstrate. As his mind moved, Luli was lifted up by an invisible force of thought, and her body gradually floated up and slowly flew up. Luli experienced flying for the first time. Her heart was pounding. She closed her eyes and held the book tightly in her arms. After a while, she found that there was no danger, so she opened her eyes and showed a happy smile on her face. She opened her arms like a bird. Amazing, I can actually fly. Leah immediately stopped, stepped forward and hugged Kyle's arm and said coquettishly, Kyle, I want to play too. Okay. Seeing the little girl like this, Kyle felt a little proud. Who can resist being looked at by a little girl with such admiring eyes? However, he had never experienced controlling multiple objects at the same time. In order to avoid accidents, he could only start to try carefully. Fortunately, it was not difficult. After a while, Leah also began to float above his head. The two little girls laughed like silver bells above. Kyle also wanted to use this opportunity to get familiar with his abilities. He controlled the two girls to keep circling, flying high, shuttling through the woods, and suddenly falling from the air and rising again. The two girls felt like they were riding a roller coaster, and screamed from time to time. It was not until the sky gradually darkened that they landed on the ground with a sense of satisfaction. Chapter 8. The two girls who had just reached the ground all felt weak in their legs and almost fell to the ground. Fortunately, Kyle was quick to catch them with one hand each. It took a while for the two girls to slowly recover. Luli's face was a little pale, but judging from the arc of her mouth, she obviously enjoyed this exciting feeling. Leah hugged Kyle's arm, her face flushed, full of excitement. Kyle, it's so fun, let's play again tomorrow, okay? Luli also looked at Kyle with anticipation. This was the first time they had such an exciting experience since they grew up. If it wasn't getting dark, they would probably pester Kyle to play for a while longer. Kyle was also very satisfied with his ability. He had just tried to see if his telekinesis could pull him up, but he didn't expect it to work. So he would have the ability to fly in the future. If he couldn't beat others in the future, he would just run away to the sky. Just thinking about it made him happy. However, he did not try to see how high he could fly, thinking that he would wait until he was physically stronger. Flying too high made him feel insecure. He was afraid that he would fall down accidentally. Suddenly, a strange idea came to Kyle. I use telekinesis to pull myself up. What's the difference between this and lifting myself up to the sky? I have to say it's quite metaphysical. Looking at the expectant eyes of the two girls beside him, Kyle had a plan in mind, with a bad face. He felt that he could not stay on this island for his whole life. Sooner or later, he would go out to sea. It would be a pity to come to this world without seeing the outside world. Since he was going to go out to sea, crew members were indispensable. It happened that these two little girls were pretty good. Their strength was not important. At most, he could find them some devil fruits in the future. Kyle still remembered the thunder fruit he had been thinking about. It was still early now, and he might have a chance to try his luck in the future. Moreover, he had 3 cultivation books. If he let the two girls practice with him, they might become strong men in the future. Then I'll trick them into going out to sea together. After spending half a day together, Kyle had a certain understanding of the two little girls. As the elder sister, Luli is quiet and likes to read books, especially medical books. As for why, Kyle doesn't know. And the younger sister, Leah, is lively and jumpy, likes to fight and kill, just like a boy. And this girl has a magical ability, with extremely good eyesight, and can see things far away clearly. Hee, it's okay to play again, but your physical condition is too poor. I'm afraid that if you make a mistake, you will bump into it. It will be difficult to explain to Mrs. Anna at that time. I'm sure you won't let me play with you in the future. Hearing Kyle say this, Leah suddenly became excited. Kyle, what should I do? I haven't played enough. Luli also agreed with Kyle's statement. The first thing she thought about was not whether she could play in the future, but that she didn't want her mother to worry. It was not easy for Anna to take care of her and her sister. If they were really injured, Anna would definitely be very worried. Kyle, do you have any solution? Luli looked at Kyle and asked. Leah also looked at Kyle with burning eyes. Kyle touched his chin and pretended to be in deep thought. After a while, he clapped his hands and said, "There is a solution." Both women looked at him expectantly. Kyle said directly, "I suggest that we start exercising together in the future. It happens that I also have a way to exercise. When our physique becomes stronger, we will not be afraid of injury." The two sisters were silent for a while. Leah smiled stiffly and said, "But I don't want to exercise. It's so tiring." Luli also nodded. Kyle said helplessly, "Then there is no way. In order to prevent you from getting hurt, I guess we can't play like today in the future." The two sisters were anxious immediately. They didn't want to give up such a fun thing, but they thought that exercising was so tiring. Both of them didn't know how to choose. At this time, Kyle said with a smile, "Leah, didn't you say you wanted to become a strong man like Uncle Loden and become the strongest swordsman in the world? How can you give up just because you are tired? And when you become strong, you can help Mrs. Anna. She must be in danger when she goes out. There are so many pirates on the sea. Can you bear that you can't protect Mrs. Anna when she encounters danger in the future?" Listening to Kyle's words, the two sisters lowered their heads and began to think. After a while, Luli spoke first. "I listened to Kyle. I want to become strong so that I can protect my mother in the future." Luli's eyes were full of determination. She had seen Loden and others fighting pirates. She also wanted to become strong so that she could protect her mother in the future. Seeing that her sister agreed, Leah was not to be outdone. Since Luli agreed, then I agree too. I want to become the strongest swordsman in the world. How can I give up so easily?" Seeing that the two sisters agreed, Kai immediately smiled and touched their heads to encourage them. "Then we have a deal. Let's become stronger together and protect this family, and no one can be lazy." Leah puffed out her chest and said proudly, "Who would be lazy? I, Leah, keep my word." Kyle looked at the two with satisfaction, sighing that they were indeed children, and they were easy to fool. As the sky gradually darkened, the three of them slowly walked home. In order to mobilize the enthusiasm of the two sisters, Kyle also told them some stories about the sea along the way. Islands in the sky 10,000 meters high, Fishman Islands 10,000 meters under the sea, small people only the size of a palm, fur tribes living on the backs of giant elephants, etc. The two sisters listened very seriously, sometimes exclaiming, sometimes showing a yearning expression. Looking at Kyle's eyes were full of admiration. When I returned to the villa, dinner had been prepared at home, and Anna and Loden were sitting at the table with papers and talking about something. Perhaps it was the issue of harvest distribution during this voyage. Seeing the three people coming in, Anna asked curiously, "What did you do? How did you get into this state?" The three of them stood in a row at this moment. All of them were a little dusty, and there was a lot of dirt and broken leaves stuck on them. The two little girls held the corners of their clothes and lowered their heads, looking at each other, not saying anything, and finally looked at Kyle. Kyle had no choice but to stand up and said a little embarrassedly, "Sorry, I took them around, so." He was also afraid that Anna would blame him for teaching her daughter bad things. Everyone was a little skeptical. How could they go around like this? Seeing this, the little maid hurriedly took them to clean up, and the three of them hurriedly fled. Looking at the three people who ran away, Anna did not blame them, and a relieved smile appeared on her face. Although the three little ones were dirty, she noticed that the two daughters seemed to have a lot of fun today. It seems that they get along very well. Chapter 9. For business, Anna always went out to sea with the merchant ship. Knowing the dangers at sea, she never agreed to her two daughters' request to go out to sea with her. This also led to her not having time to take care of her daughters most of the time. She always felt guilty for this. The only time was the last time they went out to sea, when the two sisters hid on the ship in advance, and they were not found until they went out to sea. Loudon, who was sitting on the side, also stroked his beard and smiled. It seems that Miss Luli and Miss Leah have made good friends. Anna also nodded in agreement. After Kyle and the others washed up, everyone started to eat. The three little ones sat together at the table, eating and mumbling, and I don't know what they were discussing. Luli and Leah would laugh from time to time. No one went to inquire about their chat. After dinner, everyone returned to their rooms to rest. The two girls wanted to pester Kyle to continue telling them stories, but they were still pulled back to their rooms by Anna. Kyle was not in a hurry to rest after returning to the room. It was still early, so he could do push-ups and sit-ups to exercise. After the test during the day, he found that his current physique was almost equivalent to that of an ordinary adult here. Kyle was very satisfied with this. However, thinking of the terrifying level of characters like Auntie and Cornetto when they were young, Kyle's excited heart gradually calmed down. Although my current physique cannot be compared with those people, who can say for sure about the future? 3 days of peace passed. During this time, the three of them visited the entire island. Kyle was not in a hurry to train. Every day he just accompanied the two little girls around and took care of his body. Try to get himself back to the best condition. Kyle got up early on the 4th day. After changing his clothes, he went out and started running around the island. The weather was still a little cold at 6 in the morning, but it didn't have much impact on him now. Not long after running, Kyle met Lorden and his group who were also doing running training. The difference is that Lawton and his men are all tall and strong, with muscles all over their bodies, and they all carry stones on their backs. When they run, the whole ground does not feel the vibration. The group also noticed Kyle. Many people had seen him yesterday, and those who had not seen him had heard about him from other places. The island is not big, and any news will basically come within a day. Hey, little Kayer got up so early to exercise. Lawton said with admiration. He likes this little guy more and more now. He has good qualifications and gets up so early to train. Lawton was afraid that these people did not know him, so he introduced Kyle's identity to the group of people behind him. Dozens of people also greeted him in a friendly manner. Kyle also responded politely. Good morning, uncles. Kyle joined the crowd to exercise together. An hour later, everyone looked at Kyle in surprise. They did not expect that this little guy could keep up with their pace, and even his breathing was very stable. Several people around him couldn't help but praise him. Kyle also took the opportunity to talk to the people behind him. Several people were also happy to talk. From time to time, someone would talk about the glorious deeds of fighting pirates. Kyle also showed an admiring expression, which made the people who boasted about the past have a better impression of him. What interested him was that these people had been to many islands. These people had been to islands that Kyle knew, such as Rogue Town, Windmill Village, Kokoja Village, Shields Town, Shimotsky Village, and West Rob Village. Soon everyone was chatting heatedly. During the conversation, Kyle also learned that these people were members of the island's guard team, a team spontaneously formed by the island residents to resist pirates. They usually train and maintain law and order on the island, and escort the merchant ships when they go out to sea. Because there is a former Navy officer, Loden, as a long-term instructor, the members of the guard team have good combat power. Ordinary pirates really don't dare to provoke this group of people. At this time, Lawton shouted in front. Follow closely, the guys behind, stop bragging, or you will be worse than little Kyer. If you lose, we will punish you to double the amount of training. The guys who were bragging to Kyle retorted unconvincedly. Boss, you look down on us too much. How could we lose? Yes, although little Kyer is strong, we are not weak either. Just watch. They said they didn't care, but their pace unconsciously quickened. Even when they were chatting, Kyle could keep up with them at the same speed, which made them feel a sense of urgency. They didn't want to lose to Kyle, who was only 6 years old. Another hour passed. Kyle sat on the grass panting, feeling weak all over. The morning air was a bit cold, because I felt a sore throat when I breathed after long hours of exercise. I had to cover my mouth with my sleeve to breathe. A group of guards also dropped their weights, sat on the lawn and lit cigarettes, also panting. The few people who had just refuted Lawton exhaled smoke and laughed. Tilda brother Lawton, I said it's impossible to lose to Kyle. Lawton looked at them unhappily. You really have the nerve to compare with a child. The few people were speechless. Yes, Kyle is only 6 years old, and they are actually comparing him. The few people felt embarrassed and ignored Lawton for a while. One of the people who boasted to Kyle took out a cigar and handed it to him, saying, Little Kyle, do you want one? Lawton slapped Mark on the head and scolded him with a smile. Mark, you kid, be quiet, Kyle is still a child. The young man named Mark said disapprovingly. What's wrong with being a child? I could smoke several cigarettes a day when I was 6 years old. The other people seemed to have thought of something interesting and started to tease Mark. I don't know who was chased by a stick all over the village, crying while running. Ha, I remember that if it wasn't for Brother Lawton to stop him, Mark would have been beaten and stayed in bed for a month. When the ugly incident of the year was mentioned, Mark's face was immediately embarrassed. For a moment, his face flushed and his neck thickened as he shouted, You guys, stop it, how can you talk about such things? Everyone laughed again. Kyle also found it interesting and laughed as he watched these people fighting and making noises, just like a group of children. It was already bright, and a white seagull flew over the sky. Unlike ordinary seagulls, it was very large, with a sailor's hat on its head and a small cloth bag hanging around its neck, which contained a thick stack of newspapers. Kyle knew this bird, the famous newspaper gull. I don't know if there is any special news today. Lawton waved his hand skillfully, and the newspaper gull immediately turned around and flew down, skillfully taking out a newspaper. Lawton also took out a 50 Bailey coin and put it into the small cloth bag. As a ship merchant, Lawton would buy a newspaper every day. One is to see if there are any major events recently, and the other is to see the real-time changes in the East China Sea, which can also be regarded as an advance plan for going out to sea. Chapter 10. Everyone gathered together, wanting to see what was in today's newspaper, including Kyle. Seeing everyone crowded over, Lawton hurriedly shouted, Why are you in such a hurry? I'll read it to you. The crowd was quiet and listened carefully. The Roger pirates successfully reached the final island, Raftel, through the route, and discovered the legendary treasure, One Piece, so Goldo Roger was hailed as the Pirate King by the world. After Lawton finished reading, the crowd instantly became noisy. They actually successfully reached the final island. I don't know what One Piece is. It won't be a lot of money, but the title of Pirate King is quite intimidating. What are you thinking? I think it should be a special treasure, such as the kind that can make you immortal if you eat it. Your words are even more unreliable. Everyone was arguing, mostly discussing what the treasure was. For ordinary people like them, the title of Pirate King was unattractive. After all, what they hate most is pirates. Kyle also heard the content in the newspaper, but he was not interested in it. Anyway, Roger will be executed next year, and the great pirate era at that time is worth paying attention to. As for the problem of Roger's name in the newspaper, it is obviously intentional by the Navy. The purpose is to hide the secret of D Clan. After a rest, Kyle said goodbye to everyone, wet all over, dragging his tired body towards the villa. When he opened the door, he saw Sophia sweeping the yard with a broom, and there was a small pile of fallen leaves next to her. It is estimated that the wind blew the fallen leaves into the yard last night, so Sophia started sweeping early. Kyle waved his little hand. "Good morning, Sister Sophia." Hearing Kyle's voice, Sophia smiled sweetly. "Kyle, good morning." But seeing Kyle all wet, she immediately wondered. "What did you do? Why are you like this? It's so cold, aren't you afraid of freezing?" Kyle smiled indifferently. "It's okay, I just went out for exercise for a while, and I'm sweating all over. I'll just take a shower." Sophia nodded, and seemed to remember something. "Kyle, I prepared a few changes of clothes for you. I wanted to give them to you just now, but I saw that there was no one in your room, so I put them directly on your bed." Kyle then remembered that he didn't have any clothes when he traveled here, and the broken sail was still covering his shame. The clothes he was wearing now were probably changed by Sophia. He didn't have money to buy clothes now, but he didn't expect Sophia to have prepared them for him. Kyle said gratefully, "Thank you, Sister Sophia." Sophia shook her head to indicate that it was not necessary, and pushed Kyle to take a shower and change clothes quickly, so as not to catch a cold. Kyle, who returned to the room, lay in the bathtub and soaked in hot water, feeling refreshed. His physical fatigue was also relieved a lot. Half an hour later, Kyle changed his clothes and walked out of the room. At this moment, Anna's family was sitting at the dining table eating breakfast. After greeting each other, Kyle also sat at the dining table and started eating. Luli and Leah looked at him with resentful eyes. Kyle didn't understand and asked in confusion, "Why are you looking at me like this?" Leah pouted her little mouth and said sullenly, "Kyle, you said we should exercise together, but you didn't call us when you went running in the morning, Ah, so that's what happened. I think Sophia told them about her morning exercise." Kyle could only explain, "You didn't get up at that time, and I didn't know where your room was, so I couldn't just knock on the door." Leah thought about it and felt that Kyle was right. "Okay, forget it today. Remember to notify me and my sister when you practice tomorrow, otherwise we won't play with you." Kyle agreed with a smile. This little girl is easy to coax. Anna looked at the three people with a smile. Last night, she heard her two daughters say that they were going to start practicing, and they also said that they wanted to learn swordsmanship from Kyle. At that time, she thought the two girls were joking. But from her performance just now, she found that what her daughter said was actually true. Although she didn't understand why the two sisters wanted to practice, she was very supportive in her heart. With strength, they can better protect themselves. There is no saying in this world that women can't practice martial arts. There are dangers everywhere in this sea of life. Strength represents everything. After dinner, Kyle took the two sisters to the yard. Leah was holding 3 wooden swords in her arms. I don't know where she got them from. Kyle took out 3,000 swordsmanship from his arms. He planned to practice swordsmanship in the morning, physical skills in the afternoon, and then go to the woods to practice the power of the devil fruit. The day is full of schedules. There is no way to do it. I feel very insecure without strength. I am always worried that I will meet a vicious pirate and be killed one day. The two sisters came forward and looked curiously at the booklet in Kyle's hand. There were pictures and words on it. They could understand the pictures, but they couldn't understand the words. Luli asked in confusion, "Where is this text? Why haven't I seen it before?" "This is the text of my hometown," Kyle explained, guessing that only he could understand it in this world. The two sisters did not doubt it. The sea is so big, and there are many things they don't know. Leah looked at these strange words curiously, which were square and more complicated than the words he was familiar with. "By the way, Kyle, where is your hometown? We don't know yet. If there are any fun things, take us to see it later." Leah was obviously not very interested in Reading, but asked about the situation in Kyle's hometown. I don't know either. Kyle smiled helplessly. My hometown is far, far away, so far that I probably won't be able to go back in this lifetime. Seeing Kyle's mood suddenly down, the two sisters thought that his hometown was destroyed by pirates, so he said that. Leah patted his shoulder gently. It's okay, Sister Leah will protect you in the future. Kyle's originally depressed mood suddenly dissipated, rubbing the little girl's head, and said with a smile. Sister Leah, you are not good again. He was almost amused by this girl, pretending to be a little adult all day long. Leah slapped Kyle's hand away and wrinkled her nose. Don't touch my head, you won't grow taller. Okay. Kyle stopped teasing her and put the booklet in front of him. He stood up and took a bamboo sword and began to wave it according to the pattern. The two sisters also took a bamboo sword each and began to learn from Kyle's movements. Although there was no teacher to teach, the three of them did it in a very good way. Of course. All this was done thanks to Sophia, who was standing by and cleaning. Chapter 11. Seeing several people practicing swords, Sophia also took a closer look. She found that they were indeed learning the correct swordsmanship, and the only problem might be that the movements were not quite standard. She also looked at the booklet that Kyle took out. Although she couldn't understand the words on it, she could still tell from the patterns that it was some very powerful swordsmanship. At this moment, Sophia seemed to have changed into a different person, without her usual gentleness, and only sternness on her face. She didn't know much about swordsmanship, but she had no problem teaching the three newcomers to be accurate in their movements. Sophia also knew that Leah's dream had always been to learn swordsmanship and become powerful, probably because of their father who went to sea. Unfortunately, the family couldn't afford any powerful swordsmanship teachers. If they were only taught the basic swordsmanship, they would not have the strength to go to sea at all, and it would harm them in the end. However, judging from the booklet that Kyle took out, they might really become very powerful swordsmen in the future. I just don't know where this little guy Kyle got this good stuff from. Many of them are sword moves she has never heard of. She didn't ask. Everyone has their own secrets. When practicing swordsmanship at the beginning, you don't need too many movements, just swing the sword. When practicing sword swinging, the two sisters were full of motivation at the beginning, and Leah even complained that it was too simple, and it was not easy to become a great swordsman. But it didn't take long for them to regret it. It was indeed easy to swing the sword at the beginning, but if you repeat something too many times, it will only feel boring and painful. And you have to ensure that the movements are standard, which makes it even more difficult. Luli and Leah only felt sore in their hands at this moment, and every swing of the sword felt like a torture. Seeing this, Kyle kindly advised them to practice appropriately, and there was no need to compare with himself. It would be better if he didn't persuade them. Once he persuaded them, the two sisters were immediately aroused by the desire to win, and they said they would practice with Kyle until the end. The result was that their arms were as soft as noodles when they ate lunch, and they couldn't even hold the tableware steadily. Of course, they still couldn't catch up with Kyle in the number of sword swings. After all, Kyle's physique is much stronger than theirs now. In one morning, Kyle was able to swing the sword 1,000 times while ensuring the standard of the movements. It doesn't seem like much, but each swing requires the whole body's strength. Only a 6-year-old body can swing so many times, or because of the strong physique. And he doesn't need to consider the physical damage caused by excessive training. For example, Luli and Leah were too tired to lift the sword before swinging the sword 200 times. Anna did not persuade them to give up, but praised them with a look of relief. The two sisters who were praised immediately forgot the pain in their arms, and began to eat a lot, preparing to continue physical training in the afternoon. Physical training is also very simple in the early stage. Horse stance, punching at the sandbag, etc. The sisters wore gloves when practicing to prevent injuries. Too much is as bad as too little. So just do some simple physical training. Time passed by in a flash, and it was several months. During this period, Kyle was extremely hardworking. With the special skill of life return, he trained without caring about his life. After being injured, as long as he had a big meal, his body would recover as before, and he didn't have to worry about the sequelae at all. In short, as long as he didn't die from training, he would train to death. Sometimes I sighed that this is the world of One Piece, which is completely unscientific. If he had trained so hard in his previous life, he would have died long ago. The training of the Luli sisters was very ordinary, basically just following the routine. Not to mention that their physical fitness was incomparable. More importantly, the two were just children and couldn't stand long-term training. Although they always shouted tired, they never gave up. Most of the time, they trained for one day and rested for one day. Many major events happened during this period. For example, Roger, who had just become the Pirate King, surrendered to the Navy, and Roger's pirates also announced their disbandment. The Navy even announced that Roger would be executed in Rogue Town in the East China Sea on September 1st this year. This news is undoubtedly a bombshell. Many pirates from all over the world flocked to the East China Sea, all wanting to see the historical event of the execution of the Pirate King. Kyle has been extremely cautious during this period. Basically, there are pirates passing by Hongye village every day. Most of them are pirates from the East China Sea. However, they are all in a hurry to Rogue Town, and there are not many troublemakers. Rogue Town is close to the upside-down mountain, and foreign pirates have no time to run to them. Kyle takes Luli and Leah to the highest forest on the island to practice every day. Leah is much more reliable than the lookouts on the island, and she occupies the commanding heights. It can also ensure that if there are pirates attacking the village, they can be discovered in the first time. Kyle, do you think Mom and the others will be in danger? Since the news that Roger was going to be executed came out, there have been a lot more pirates, and they probably encountered more. Luli sat on a small stool, holding a roasted leg of lamb in her hand, and she didn't eat a bite for a long time. Thinking about things in her heart, she felt that the food in her hand was not fragrant. The firelight reflected on her little face, and she could see obvious sorrow. It was dark, and the three of them sat in a circle, each holding a roasted leg of lamb in their hands. There was a bonfire in the middle, and a 2-meter-long roasted whole lamb was hung on it. In the quiet woods, only the sizzling sound of grease dripping into the fire could be heard. Kyle was also worried about the safety of Anna and her group, but unfortunately they had already gone out to sea, and it was useless to react, so he could only comfort them. It's okay, at this critical time, the Navy will definitely send more people, and Sophia and Uncle Loden are here, don't worry. Not long ago, Anna took the merchant ship out to sea again. At that time, Kyle also seriously suggested not to go out to sea during this period, because the sea was very chaotic. Unfortunately, the news of Roger's surrender had not yet been spread, and no one except Kyle knew that the sea was about to be in turmoil. Anna just thought that the three children were reluctant to leave her, and did not take it seriously. Kyle had no choice if the other party did not believe it. He could not tell the other party that the Pirate King was about to be executed and the world would usher in the Great Pirate Era. Whether he would believe it or not was not clear, and even if he believed it, he would not be able to explain where he got the news from. Seeing the depressed atmosphere, Kyle took the opportunity to drink chicken soup. So, we have to practice hard and strive to help everyone as soon as possible. In the past few months, the three people's practice results have been significantly improved, and the sisters have become much stronger. The family is not short of money, and there is no need to worry about not being able to keep up with nutrition. At worst, there are still small animals in the mountains. Now they have a certain chance of winning even if they fight against the wild wolves in the mountains alone. The roasted whole lamb they eat now was hunted by Luli alone. Because of the concern for Anna's safety, Luli practiced very hard during this period, and the amount of training was almost catching up with half of Kyle. Chapter 12. As for Leah, Kyle turned his head to look. At this time, the other party had a red cloth tied on her head, covering her eyes. Those who didn't know would probably think that the little girl had some problems with her eyes. Sensing Kyle's gaze, Leah wiped her mouth with her greasy little hands. The cloth seemed unable to block her sight. She did this not to be cool, but a special training method that Kyle told her. It is said that this way you can quickly practice the so-called observation hockey. Kyle gave a thumbs up and was very satisfied with Leah's practice results. This method was also seen in the booklet by him, blocking the vision and combining it with combat training. In this way, you can quickly practice observation hockey. Kyle also saw Leah's talent in vision, and on a whim, he asked her to practice observation hockey first. Unexpectedly, the effect was extremely good, far beyond Kyle's expectations. At first, there were bumps and bumps all day long, so she was injured several times. Leah didn't give up either. In her words, scars are the medals of warriors. Of course, Kyle would not believe that she would have such a feeling, and he probably heard it from somewhere else. In just a few months, the observation hockey has achieved strong results. Now, even if her vision is blocked, Leah can sense everything within a certain distance. Even if the distance is farther, she can sense the general movement. Kyle also tried this for a while, but the effect was not good. This also further confirmed Leah's strong talent in observation hockey. Looking at the two sisters, Kyle is full of confidence in the future. If they continue to practice like this, the achievements of the few people in the future may not be worse than those members of powerful forces. In the next few days, shocking news came one after another. First, the Golden Lion Shaki attacked Marineford and was arrested and imprisoned, and then the Pirate King, Roger, was executed in Roger Town. The most eye-catching one was Roger's execution. Roger in the newspaper sat on the execution platform with a smile on his face and shouted that classic sentence. "Want my treasure? If you want, go find it. I put all my treasure there." This sentence undoubtedly attracted many people. Everyone wants to know what the so-called One Piece is and where it is. As the only pirate group that has been to the final island, countless people regard it as their own belief. Because of Roger's words, countless people went out to sea with their dreams and headed for the Grand Line, hoping to find the legendary treasure. Unfortunately, just when everyone was eager to try, the Navy sent a large number of soldiers to clean up the town of Rogue. With the warring states known as the Wise General, the Navy will definitely not let go of such a good opportunity to clean up the pirates. Those with strength escaped, and those without strength had their pirate dreams shattered on the spot. Kyle was far away in Hongye village, and he could still feel the strength of the Navy's cleanup of pirates this time. At dusk, Kyle and the other two lazily lay on the beach chairs by the sea, enjoying a rare leisure time. Looking at the newspaper in his hand, Kyle couldn't help but sigh. "I have to say that Golden Lion is really awesome. He single-handedly defeated the Marine headquarters and fought against Garp and Sengoku alone. Although he failed, he is the first person in history. Yeah, it's really amazing." Leah suddenly stood up from the beach chair, holding a long sword and pointing it at the sea. "I've decided, I will become such a powerful existence in the future. No, I will be more powerful than him." Kyle was stunned by the sudden heroism of this girl, and then he burst out laughing. "Come on, someone who is lazy even in training can't become such a strong man." Leah, who was suddenly sabotaged, blushed and glared at Kyle. "You are humiliating the strongest swordsman in the future. I want to duel with you." "I won't. You are too weak." Kyle waved his hand. "I have been practicing very seriously recently. Don't be so proud. Either duel or..." The long sword pointed directly at little Kyle, with a sly smile on his face. Kyle's face darkened, and he raised his palm and slapped her little butt twice. Feeling the pain, Leah threw away her sword, covered her butt with a mask of pain on her face, and mist rose in her eyes. "Bad Kyle, stupid Kyle, you bullied me, woo." She ran to Luli with grievance and hugged her arm. "Sister, Kyle bullied me." Come with me to deal with this guy. Luli tried hard to hold back her laughter and turned her head to the side. You should go by yourself, I'm afraid of pain. Humph, you all bully me, I won't play with you anymore. Looking at the aggrieved Leah, Kyle smiled and pulled her. Okay, if it still hurts, I'll help you rub it. Leah turned her head away and ignored this guy. At this time, there was a loud bang, and all three of them looked up in the direction of the port. Leah immediately spread out her observation hockey. After a while, she pulled Kyle's clothes and said anxiously, Kyle, I sense that there are many people fighting in the port. I guess there are pirates again. Both of them were shocked when they heard this. They had no doubts, and they all knew that Leah's observation hockey was very powerful. Kyle didn't delay, picked up the two women and flew out of the woods and ran quickly to the port. In a small building near the port, Kyle stood at the second-floor window, watching the two groups of people in front of him fighting fiercely. There was also a strange ship docked in the water, with a skull painted on the flag, which was obviously a pirate ship. Looking at the flag, Kyle thought carefully and found that he had never seen it before, so he was sure that it was not a powerful pirate. No more delay, telekinesis controlled a small flying knife and rushed directly into the battlefield. Ha ha ha, guys, this island is said to be very rich. If you rob them, I will take you to the Grand Line to fight for the legendary One Piece. A wild laugh broke out on the battlefield. A 3-meter-tall man held a large sword as tall as a person and waved it at the crowd in front of him. A member of the escort team didn't have time to dodge and was directly cut in two by the sword. The rest of the people who dodged had cold sweat on their foreheads and fear in their eyes. Seeing the captain so brave, the pirates cheered fiercely. Boss is mighty. Ha ha ha, what Roger, I think our captain should be the Pirate King. A group of unsophisticated minions flattered him directly. With such a captain, what would they be afraid of the Navy in the future? The big man seemed to be very pleased. Every time he waved the sword, there would be a sound of breaking through the air. Deputy Captain Mark, what should we do now? We can't stand it anymore. Several members of the escort team held guns and knives, struggling to resist the pirates' attack. Mark was also covered in blood at this time, with more than 10 wounds on his body. He led more than 10 people to resist the attack of the big man. He barely dodged the big knife and replied with gritted teeth. What else can we do? We have to stand it even if we can't stand it, otherwise all our families will die. I have notified the Navy, everyone hold on. All the members of the escort team were silent after hearing this, and they also knew that if they failed, the whole island would not have a good end. As for the Navy's assistance, they no longer had hope, as it would take at least 4 hours to get here from the Navy station. And it has been less than an hour since they asked for help. This group of pirates had no martial ethics at all. They started to fight without saying a word after landing on the island. Everyone resisted with a mentality of death, and they had to defend the village even if they died. Chapter 13. At this moment, a cold light suddenly rushed into the battlefield, attacking the head of the leader. A sense of death made the big man's pupils shrink, and he hurriedly raised his knife to resist. Ding! A metal collision sounded. The big man felt that he was hit by a huge rock, and retreated more than 10 steps, and the big knife in his hand broke into 2 sections with a snap. After stabilizing his body, he breathed a sigh of relief, and his forehead was full of cold sweat. If he hadn't reacted quickly, he would have died just now. Then the big man was furious, and his fierce eyes swept around. Who is it? The other pirates also saw their boss being attacked, and all of them widened their eyes. Their boss is famous for his great strength, but now he was repelled by something. Even the big knife was broken. How terrifying power does it take? Before they could think too much, more than 10 air-breaking sounds rang out. More than a dozen flying knives kept shuttling across the battlefield, and every time they passed by, a blood hole would appear on the neck of a pirate. After so much training, Kyle is now very skilled in using telekinesis, and can basically control all the objects around him at will. It can be said that it was easy to deal with this group of pirates. Looking at several familiar corpses in the port, Kyle was very angry. Several people had talked to him not long ago. He wanted to pick up the knife and slash these damn pirates, but he still had a rough idea of his own strength. His advantage now is not physical strength, but the ability of the devil fruit. In order not to expose himself, he deliberately hid in an empty room near the port. The cold light kept flashing on the port, and one pirate after another suddenly fell down. After more than 10 seconds, only the villagers on the island were still standing in the port. The pirate captain was the most miserable. He thought he could be carefree after dodging a knife, but the sudden appearance of more than 10 flying knives not only killed all his brothers. Later, all the fire was focused on him. The result was obvious, with more than a dozen bloody holes on his body. His eyes were wide open before he died, and he didn't know who attacked him until he died. Seeing that all the pirates were solved, Kyle breathed a sigh of relief. This was the first time he killed so many people at once. What's this inexplicable excitement? Seeing Kyle easily solve more than a dozen pirates, the sisters were not surprised. They had seen Kyle's more terrifying abilities. For example, directly controlling the seawater to overturn an entire ship. About 2 hours later, a warship slowly sailed on the sea. It's not that the Navy is inefficient, but it takes time from receiving the news to rushing over. They have tried to speed up as much as possible. On a warship that is traveling at high speed. Lieutenant Colonel Randy of the 16th Navy branch in the East China Sea stood quietly at the bow. The outline of an island can be vaguely seen in front. The Marine came forward with a stack of information and reported. Report to Lieutenant Colonel Randy, this group of pirates is the Rocky Pirates, and the captain, Karlaki, has a bounty of 15 million. According to reliable information, this group of pirates escaped during the cleanup operation in Rogue Town and came all the way here. Randy took the information handed over by his subordinates, read it carefully, and instantly became furious, throwing the information on the ground. These damn pirates, bastards. I will make them look good when I catch them. It's no wonder he was angry. According to the information, this group of pirates came all the way from Rogue Town to Maple Leaf Island, and looted a total of 4 villages along the way. Hundreds of civilians have died in their hands, not to mention the lost property. Randy now only hopes to reach the destination as soon as possible. However, he was still a step late. Wait for the warship to dock at the port. The Navy saw countless corpses in the port at a glance, as well as the pirate ship docked next to it. Countless Marines showed anger. It seems that the battle is over. Randy jumped off the warship and looked at everything around him with a gloomy face. But the ship is still there, and these guys must still be on the island. Randy only thought that the bodies in the port were all villagers here, and whether they were the bodies of pirates. He never thought that according to the intelligence, this group of pirates was very strong, otherwise there would not be a bounty of tens of millions. Even their navy had to be careful. The villagers also noticed the warships, but they were not afraid. The navy was still very reliable in the eyes of ordinary people. The old village chief trembled and walked forward. Before he spoke, he saw a man who looked like a naval officer bowed to him and apologized. I'm sorry, this is our Navy's negligence. We failed to protect everyone. May I ask where the pirates went? In order to avoid more injuries, we need to rush over as soon as possible. The village chief was stunned by the question, and it took him a while to understand. It seems that the Navy mistook the bodies on the ground for villagers. Sir, you are wrong. The pirates have all been wiped out. What? Randy thought he had heard wrong. His voice was 8 degrees higher. He pointed at the many bodies on the ground and said uncertainly, "What are these on the ground?" The village chief stroked his beard and smiled. Of course they are pirates, but we still have to thank the Navy for coming to help the village. At this time, several Marines who went to investigate also hurried over, holding a bloody corpse in their hands. He began to report in disbelief. Lieutenant Colonel Randy, the pirates have all been wiped out. Captain Karlaki is also dead. After taking out the bounty order and comparing it carefully, and hearing the report from his subordinates, Randy finally confirmed that he was not dreaming. Although the development of the matter was unexpected, he was a lieutenant colonel in the Navy after all, and always remembered his duties. After being shocked, he ordered his subordinates to clean up the port with the villagers and move the bodies to the pirate ship. After everything was settled, he found the village chief to ask for details. According to his observation just now, the villagers here are all very ordinary and don't have the strength to destroy the rocky pirates. The only explanation is that there is a powerful existence on this island, and this possibility has been confirmed from the conversation with the villagers. The Marines sorted out the collected information in disbelief. The blades shuttled through the crowd. The weapons that were about to cut him suddenly turned around. Karlaki was killed by more than 10 broken blades. He doubted whether these guys were bragging to him. Why did they say such weird things one by one? Randy looked at the information thoughtfully. He was not as ignorant as other Marines. He had been to the Grand Line and studied at the headquarters. He had seen many devil fruit ability users. It seems that there is a devil fruit user on this island, but I don't know who it is. Maybe we can go visit him and see if we can invite him into the Navy. Thinking of this, he quickly ordered his men. Go and find out if there are any special people on the island, such as those who can manipulate objects. Keep a low profile and don't disturb the civilians. Yes. Several Marines immediately took the order and left. Chapter 14. Kyle didn't know that the Navy was looking around for people with special abilities, so it didn't matter even if he knew. Except for Luli and Leah, no one saw him to it, and even if they knew there was a person with special abilities on the island, they wouldn't suspect Kyle. Things developed as he expected. The Navy asked many villagers, but found nothing. They didn't know what kind of person with special abilities, and there were no special people on the island. The most likely people with special abilities were probably Loden and Sophia, and they haven't returned from the sea yet. Hearing reports from a group of subordinates, Randy didn't investigate too much. Since no one knew, it meant that the person with special abilities was hiding deliberately, so he wouldn't deliberately make enemies with him. As long as the other party is not a pirate and doesn't do evil, it's fine. At most, let people pay proper attention to this place in the future. But he still reported this matter. A person with strong abilities is hidden in a small island, and how to deal with this unstable factor still needs to be decided by the higher-ups. After the pirate incident just now, Kyle and the other two were not in the mood to play anymore. After packing up, I went to the villa. On the way, I met several panicked maids and guards. These were the members of the villa. They had just received news of the pirate attack, and the two ladies and Kyle were nowhere to be seen. Fearing an accident, they hurried out to look for them. All the maids and guards breathed a sigh of relief when they saw Kyle and the other two, and immediately came to meet them excitedly. Leah looked at them in confusion. "Why are you in such a hurry?" The maid in the lead patted her chest and said with lingering fear. "Miss Luli, Miss Leah, Master Kyle, it's great that you are all okay. Pirates just attacked the village, and you disappeared. Everyone was very worried about you, so they went out to look for you." Luli waved her hand to comfort everyone. "We are all fine, don't worry, the pirates have just been dealt with by the guards, and the Navy has also arrived." Thinking of the fact that there are many more wounded in the village this time, Luli continued. "Alicia, many people in the village are injured. You take the medicine and go with everyone to help the villagers, and prepare some food to send to the clinic." "Okay, Miss Luli," the leading maid responded and immediately arranged the actions of the people behind her. The three of them returned to the villa and lay down on the sofa. "It's really comfortable at home. Blue tilde blue tilde blue." At this time, the Den Den Mushi lying on the coffee table made a sound. Luli did not hesitate and picked up the microphone on it. At this time, it should be Anna who called. The village guards also had Den Den Mushi on the ship. It is estimated that they told everyone on the ship what happened in the village. "Hello, Mom, I'm Luli. Luli, are you all okay? The Den Den Mushi professionally imitated Anna's worried expression at the moment. It's okay, Mom, the pirates have been eliminated, and the Navy is here too. Luli immediately told everything that happened, but she didn't expose Kyle. Anna, who was on the other side, was relieved to know that everything was fine at home, and said that she would be back in a week. After hanging up the phone, Luli looked at Kyle proudly. You did a good job, I kept the secret for you. Mom and the others thought that someone extraordinary had appeared in the village, and they probably never thought that the person was you, Kyle. Kyle didn't care whether it was kept secret or not. There were only a few people in the whole village, and they were all familiar people. He was an outsider, and he knew it was him. So it didn't matter whether it was kept secret or not. In order not to discourage the little girl, he still gave a thumbs up and praised, "You are worthy of being smart and cute, Luli." Luli squinted happily after receiving the praise, and enjoyed the praise from Kyle. In Zailuobu village, 2 large ships were docked at the port, with flags with red leaves on them. Many crew members were busy moving boxes of goods to the port. Anna finally felt relieved after hanging up the Den Den Mushi. She was so worried when she learned that the village was attacked by pirates. She was still in shock at this time. No one expected that the village would encounter such powerful pirates. If it weren't for the mysterious strong man, she didn't dare to think about the consequences and what would happen to her 2 daughters. Now that she got the news that her daughters were fine, she finally felt relieved. It seems that we have saved an incredible person. I didn't expect that he is a devil fruit user like you. If it weren't for him this time, the village would probably be finished. Looking at the busy crew members below, Anna smiled and spoke, feeling fortunate in her heart. Obviously, she guessed the identity of the mysterious strong man. After all, a fool can't run such a big industry. Yes, Sophia nodded, and the round black ears on her head moved. At the beginning, she felt that Kyle was not simple. He carried a precious sword with him, and there were some cultivation books that she couldn't understand. Will the 2 ladies? Sophia said hesitantly. After all, we don't know Kyle's specific identity. He has powerful strength but chooses to hide. Anna interrupted Sophia's next words. Don't worry, I can see that the child is not a bad person, and if he is a bad person, he won't save the village, nor will he teach Luli and Leah to practice. Sophia also nodded in agreement. Although she didn't spend a long time with Kyle, she could see that Kyle had no ill will towards this family. She said that just out of the vigilance that a guard should have. The news that the Rocky pirates were completely wiped out did not attract much attention. A 15 million bounty on a pirate would be a big deal if it were normal times, but now it is a special period. Pirate King Roger was just executed not long ago, and many big figures stayed in the East China Sea. The 16th branch of the Navy also issued a statement saying that it was their doing. Of course, this was also deliberately done by Randy. Since Kyle wants to hide, the Navy can also help him, which is also a good thing for the Navy. Not to mention a real credit, it also hit the pirates' arrogance. However, Randy, the lieutenant colonel, is still a very kind person. Just because he coveted this credit, the pirates' bounty was still sent to Hongye village, totaling 30 million, and an extra 1 million Baileys. As for who to give it to, it is none of his business. Let the people in the village solve it themselves. Time passed again. Since the Rocky pirates were wiped out on Maple Leaf Island, basically no pirates have thought of attacking here. Kyle entered a peaceful life of cultivation. One day in September 1502 of the Haiyuan calendar. Anna looked at Kyle seriously. You said you wanted to go out to sea with us. Kyle nodded. I want to go out and learn swordsmanship. Chapter 15. Looking at Kyle's determined eyes, Anna was silent. After so many years of getting along, she had already regarded Kyle as her own child. Now that the child has grown up and wants to go out to pursue his dreams, what reason does she have to stop him? Besides, Kyle has the strength to face danger. Sighing, he asked with concern, have you decided where to go? The Ishin Dojo in Shimotsuki village. Kyle had been preparing to go to this place for a long time. Originally, he thought that with the 3,000 swordsmanships, he could sit back and relax, and stay on the island to practice to a high level. But recently he found out that he was wrong, and practicing behind closed doors would never make him a strong man. After practicing swordsmanship hard for several years, the progress can be said to be negligible. And the best place to learn swordsmanship in the East China Sea is definitely Shimotsuki village, as the heir of the Shimotsuki family. Shimotsuki Koshiro is definitely a hidden boss. It's this place. Anna breathed a sigh of relief. She has also been to Shimotsuki village, and there is indeed a good swordsmanship teacher there. Since you have made up your mind, I have no reason to stop you. Remember to take good care of yourself. This is your home forever. Kyle nodded and left the room. After years of practice, he has now successfully cultivated armament hockey and observation hockey. But they are just getting started. Armament hockey is divided into hardening and release. Kyle has only mastered hardening now. At this stage, it has already taken the means to fight against ability users, which is the most basic use of armament hockey. As for release, it is very powerful. It can not only defend, but also release energy like shock waves. It's a pity that he can't do it. Kyle remembered that the improvement of armament hockey can only be achieved through the tempering of life and death. It can be regarded as the manifestation of one's own willpower. The method taught in the booklet is to use various weapons to hit oneself every day, and no defensive means can be used during the period, and then combined with medicinal baths. It is not clear whether this method is right or wrong. But he has no other way. Kyle didn't want to fight for his life. He only had one life. If he accidentally met a tough guy, it would be a waste. Following the method in the booklet, he used telekinesis to control various weapons to hit himself every day. He could exercise his ability and temper his body at the same time. But the effect was quite good. His willpower did improve when he endured the pain. Of course, this effect could not be achieved by simply practicing. He also needed medicinal baths and a lot of food to supplement his nutrition. Fortunately, Anna was a rich woman and was very generous with her 3 children's food and clothing. Anna also gave Kyle the bounty from the last pirate incident. I just don't know if the money came from her own pocket or from the villagers. As for the 6 styles of the Navy, Kyle didn't learn them. In his opinion, it was completely unnecessary. He was a devil fruit player. He would be stupid to compete with others in physical skills. At worst, he could use swordsmanship. And many moves can be completely replaced by the power of devil fruits. For example, the principle of shave is to step on the ground more than 10 times in an instant, and use the explosive speed generated by the reaction force to move. The telekinesis fruit can control the movement of oneself and the surrounding objects. Kyle has tried it, and the speed of controlling the movement of objects is extremely fast, such as the last time he killed the group of pirates. It is to control the flying knife with telekinesis to attack at an extremely fast speed. Using telekinesis to control oneself can also have this effect, but the speed of movement depends on one's own physical fitness. If the physical fitness is poor, it can't withstand the sudden acceleration at all. If the physical fitness reaches a certain level, perhaps the speed of movement can be completely compared with the speed of the flash fruit and the thunder fruit. Iron block and moon step are similar. Who would use iron block if you have armament hockey, let alone moon step? There is nothing special about the other few styles. It is much simpler to practice the observation hockey. Now he is like Leah, covering his eyes with a piece of cloth, and the 2 will spar every day. The loser will be beaten. In order not to be beaten, both sides practice very hard and make rapid progress. Leah's progress is extremely exaggerated. Kyle is sometimes envious. Now her observation hockey can completely cover the entire island. Not only that, with the improvement of observation hockey, Kyle was surprised to find that this girl's observation hockey can actually achieve short distance perspective. This LSP exclusive skill made him envious for a long time. Unfortunately, he has limited talent and can only envy. With swordsmanship combined with observation hockey, Leah now has a certain self-protection ability in the East China Sea. Luli's training progress is a bit mediocre, mainly because she is not suitable for fighting and does not have much time for training. Training is also for some self-protection power, not like Kyle and Leah is so hardworking. She spends most of her time studying medical books. Kyle saw two small figures sitting on the steps, leaning against each other alone before he walked far. Luli, Leah, why are you here? Kyle, don't you want me and Leah? Before he got close, he heard Luli's aggrieved voice. Kyle secretly said that it was not good. This is going to be bad. When he got closer, he saw Luli pouting and her eyes were red. Kyle, we agreed to practice together all the time. Do you dislike us for being too weak, just like Dad disliked us in the past, and want to abandon us and leave alone? As she said this, tears flowed down uncontrollably. Leah glared at Kyle with her hands on her hips. Asshole Kyle, we agreed to practice together and go to sea together in the future, but you didn't take us with you. If you don't make it clear today, then we will break up. Oh my, Kyle was in a big head. He was afraid of this situation. He had planned to tell her when he left, and he would not be away for too long. Anna would definitely feel uncomfortable if she kidnapped someone else's young daughter. So he kept it a secret from the two sisters, but they still found out. Seeing Luli crying, Kyle felt that he had done something wrong this time. It was like something was stuck in his heart, and it was very uncomfortable. He always looked at the two sisters from an adult's perspective. Just coax them. Many times, their feelings were ignored. Since their father left, the two sisters have become extremely sensitive and afraid of the departure of their family. Kyle did not explain. He hugged the two little girls in his arms. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have left you alone. I promise I won't do this again in the future. The two sisters hugged Kyle and cried, raising their little fists and beating them non-stop. Bad Kyle, stupid Kyle, jerk Kyle. Don't cry, you'll become a little cat if you keep crying. I'll go and tell Aunt Anna that I'll take you two out to sea this time. Kyle comforted. Humph, that's better. The two sisters shrugged and stopped crying. Chapter 16. In the maple forest behind the villa. Having just finished their training, Kyle and the other two were sitting on the edge of the cliff, all wet. Kyle used his memory from his previous life to manipulate the seawater in front of him into the shapes of various creatures with his telekinesis. This is what the mermaids look like. Their upper body is human, and their lower body is fish-like. Luli and Leah sat together with their chins in their hands, their legs dangling on the edge of the cliff. Listening to Kyle's explanation, they would ask questions from time to time. Leah blinked her big eyes, looking longingly. Kyle, where is the Fishman Island you mentioned? Can we go there to play in the future? While speaking, he tilted his head slightly to avoid a sudden attack of a wooden stick. Luli was also very interested and looked at Kyle. I will definitely go there when I have the chance, but that place is a bit dangerous. It is located 10,000 meters below the seabed under the Sabayati archipelago. At least we have to have the power to protect ourselves. Kyle thought for a while and said. Danger. Leah was puzzled. In Kyle's story, mermaids are very good creatures. Could they attack her for no reason? Yes. Kyle nodded and said, the reason why Fishman Island is called Fishman Island is because there are mermaids and fishmen. They are just like us humans, there are good people and bad people. Some are willing to be friends with humans, while others hate humans very much. The two sisters thought about it and seemed to understand. They also cheered themselves up in their hearts. They must practice well in the future and strive to see the outside world as soon as possible. Luli, who was thinking, did not notice that a small stone suddenly attacked her. She was hit on the forehead before she could react. Ouch! With a thud, Luli covered her forehead in pain, gritted her teeth and looked at Leah, grabbed a wooden stick and wanted to rush up. Leah, You actually used so much strength. Leah hid behind Kyle and stuck out her tongue at Luli. Who told you not to learn observation hockey? Besides, how can the training be effective if it doesn't hurt? Lily was speechless. Then she became depressed. She also saw that Kyle and Leah had learned observation hockey, but she was the only one who hadn't learned it, which made her feel very bad. Kyle, am I useless? I haven't learned it for so long. Kyle gently rubbed Luli's forehead and comforted her. Take it slowly. Everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses. There is no need to be so strict with yourself. You are our future ship doctor. You don't have to fight. Leah also felt that she had done too much. Seeing her sister's sad look, she lost interest in playing. Lily, I'm sorry. If it hurts, you can hit me too, or I can blow it for you so that it won't hurt. She said and put her mouth in front of Luli. Looking at the little face approaching, Luli burst into tears and laughed. Pushing Leah away, she said with a smile. Do you think I'm a child? Hee hee. Seeing that Luli was no longer sad, Leah also smiled foolishly. Kyle stood up and patted the dust on his butt and said, Okay, let's end the story today. It's time to go home and pack up. We have to go out to sea tomorrow. The two sisters stood up with some reluctance, but they were looking forward to going out to sea to play somewhere else tomorrow. Anna was reluctant to take the two girls out to sea, but thinking of the last pirate incident, she was worried about her two daughters staying in the village. In addition, Kyle is going out to sea now, and the village has lost its high-end combat power. The rest are some members of the escort team. Going out to sea is equivalent to taking away most of the combat power in the village. In this comparison, if they stay in the village and pirates really come, the only way is to wait for the support of the navy. The support could not arrive immediately, and it would take some time. It would be safer for the two daughters to follow Kyle. Kyle used telekinesis to drag the two sisters away from the woods, and encountered many wild beasts on the way. But they all just looked up and ignored them. The three of them often came here, and the beasts were used to it. At first, they would drive away these invaders, but most of these beasts could not fly, and they could not do anything to Kyle and the other two. In the end, they just ignored them. 5 o'clock the next morning. Kyle got up early, and he didn't need to bring much, some clothes to change and the silver sword. He also gave the sword a name. Yupo. When he walked out of the room, he saw Luli and Leah dressed similarly to him, also carrying small bags and swords. This time, the two of them were no longer carrying wooden swords, but the real thing. They also saw that Kyle had a sword of his own, and they clamored to have one of their own. The two begged for a long time, and Anna had no choice but to agree to let someone help them make it. At this moment, the two stood side by side with their arms folded across their chests, their faces full of coldness and arrogance, just like knights who traveled around the world. What did you two do last night? I almost thought you were a panda monster because of the dark circles under your eyes. Kyle ruthlessly broke the serious atmosphere. Leah was instantly broken, glaring at Kyle with her teeth bared. Because they were going to go to sea, she and her sister were so excited that they didn't sleep all night, and they only found dark circles under their eyes when they woke up in the morning. You are the panda monster, you dare to laugh at us, hum. Sister, come with me to defeat this hateful Kyle. Luli nodded, very interested in this proposal. As soon as Anna went out, she saw 3 people fighting in the living room. Kyle fought 1 against 2, and the 2 sides fought back and forth. Kyle, Luli, Leah, it's time for us to leave. Hearing the voice, the 3 of them stopped playing and became good kids. Anna didn't say much, and walked towards the dock with Sophia and the 3 little ones. The dock was very lively at the moment, with 2 large ships docked in the water, and flags with red leaf patterns on them. Dozens of people moved the goods onto the ship one after another. Lorden stood aside, holding a cigar in his mouth, and gave instructions from time to time. Seeing Anna and her group, Lorden threw away his cigar and said, Mrs. Anna, the goods have been almost loaded, and it is estimated that we can set sail in half an hour." Anna nodded and didn't ask for anything. Lorden is generally responsible for the loading and unloading of goods, and she is also very relieved about it. At this time, Lorden also noticed Kyle and the other two who were looking around. Lorden looked at Anna and said worriedly, "Mrs. Anna, will you take them out to sea this time? Will it be too dangerous?" "It's okay. They can take care of themselves, and it's safer to be with us than to stay at home." After Kyle and the others boarded the ship, the cargo was basically loaded. The crew lowered the sails, and the two ships slowly left the port. Looking at the land gradually moving away, Kyle couldn't help but feel a little emotional. This was his first time to go out to sea since he came to this world. Chapter 17. The 10 days of drifting on the sea came back to my mind, and the loneliness, helplessness, and fear at that time came all at once. He reached out and patted his face, telling himself that the situation now was different from before. At this time, a small hand patted Kyle's shoulder, and a small and delicate face came closer. "Kyle, what are you looking at?" Kyle was startled, turned around and found that it was Leah, and immediately lamented that he had been comfortable for too long and didn't even notice anyone approaching. If this was an enemy, it would be over. Kyle always told himself that this world is very dangerous, and he must always be vigilant. He must be cautious before he has strong strength. Turning around, pinching Leah's little face, she said viciously, "Do you know that scaring people can scare people to death?" Leah's face was pinched, and her voice was unclear. "I saw you suddenly stunned, and your face was not right, so I was worried about you." Luli, who was following behind, was also worried. "Are you okay? Are you feeling uncomfortable?" "I just remembered some things in the past, you don't have to worry." Kyle shook his head. The two sisters looked at each other and understood instantly. They all knew that Kyle had had a bad experience at sea before. Luli gently hugged Kyle. "You will no longer be alone in the future. We will accompany you." Seeing her sister suddenly hug Kyle, Leah was not to be outdone and also hugged Kyle. "You hug me too." Kyle felt very awkward to be comforted by two children. "Just now, I was subconsciously moved in my heart. It seems that because of my age, my personality has become like a child." "Yes, that's it." The first target of the ship was the Kingdom of Oiko, and everyone on the ship dared not relax at all. Lawton stood at the bow and shouted loudly, "Everyone, cheer up and keep an eye on the changes on the sea. There are all kinds of rebellions, big and small, in the Kingdom of Oiko all year round, which leads to the rampant bandits and mountain bandits in many places in the country. There are also many people who can't survive and have to become pirates. Although the fleet is on the route where the navy is stationed, some bold pirates are not ruled out. Merchant ships like theirs are the easiest to be robbed. Pirates go to sea for wealth, and the fastest and easiest way is to rob these merchant ships. Leah is also caught from time to act as a lookout. She is not opposed to this. She can help everyone and get everyone's praise, which can greatly satisfy Leah's vanity. Kyle still has some impression of this country. Nami seemed to be born in this country, but later there was a battle between the navy and pirates, and she was finally rescued by Belmir, a navy. It's a pity that Kyle didn't know exactly when the war took place, otherwise he really wanted to see Nami when she was a child. With top-level sailing talent, even the Golden Lion couldn't help but snatch it. If there is a chance, Kyle also wants to take Nami, and he doesn't want to miss this future top navigator. If she is kidnapped on board, the benefits will definitely be great. He was also thinking about how to invite Nami on board in the future. As for what to do with King Luffy, who cares? The ship sailed very fast, and it took only 2 days to arrive at the port of the Kingdom of Oiko. They encountered 2 waves of pirates along the way, but fortunately they were not strong, and Lawton and his men could easily solve them. Kyle thought they would choose to subdue the pirates, and then notify the navy to exchange for a bounty. As a result, Lawton and his men killed both groups of pirates in a few seconds. Kyle also asked Loden about this matter, and Loden replied, "The money lost in exchange for bounties is more than the bounties of these pirates combined." Kyle had to sigh at this. It is indeed a merchant ship, and it is indeed rich. The ship docked, some people moved goods, some went to purchase, and Anna took Sophia to some chambers of commerce to discuss cooperation. Everyone seemed very busy. The ship will dock here for 3 days, and Kyle and his friends can't stay on the ship all the time. There are many skilled shipwrights at the dock, and merchant ships also need to be repaired and maintained. Except for the shipwrights who need to work, everyone else chooses to live in the hotel. Looking at the bustling port, Leah immediately clamored to go to this port town. Anna did not stop it. There is a security team on the island, and generally no one makes trouble. Even if something happens, Kyle and his friends have the ability to protect themselves. The three of them strolled on the street, all looking at everything around them with curiosity. The street is full of shops and people. The level of liveliness is totally incomparable to Maple Leaf Village. "Luli, where is the clothing store?" "Kyle, look, there is a pub over there, I haven't been there yet." Kyle. Along the way, Leah was like a little sparrow, chattering non-stop, full of curiosity about everything. After a while, the two sisters walked into a clothing store hand in hand, and Kyle had to follow. When they came out, the two sisters smiled happily, and the boss waved excitedly behind them, saying that he would come again next time. Kyle was miserable, carrying several boxes, all of which were extremely expensive clothes. Fortunately, he brought enough money when he came out. The two sisters found everything new, and they had to go into any store to have a look. It was as if they didn't feel tired, and they pulled Kyle to go wherever there were many people. If it weren't for Kyle's alertness, the sisters' long swords and wallets would have been stolen by others several times. Just then, Leah pulled Kyle's sleeve and whispered, "Kyle, I sense that 2 people have been following us, starting as soon as we entered the city." Hearing someone following them, Luli subconsciously looked back and saw 2 people following them stealthily, holding newspapers in their hands, pretending to be ordinary pedestrians. One strong man, one thin man. Oh, Kyle looked at Leah in surprise. He didn't expect that she actually found out. He thought that this girl was heartless and didn't know anything. "It's okay, just follow them," Kyle said indifferently. He had sensed it a long time ago, and wanted to see what the 2 sneaky guys behind him wanted to do. Seeing that Kyle didn't care, Leah didn't say much. Anyway, Kyle would solve any problem. Luli said worriedly, "Kyle, will this be dangerous?" "Oh, Luli, what are you afraid of? Kyle is so powerful that there must be no danger." Leah pulled her forward. Unconsciously, the 3 of them walked to a remote street near the sea. Luli sniffed her nose and smelled the aroma of food in the air, revealing an intoxicated look. The little stomach also made a gurgling sound. Pointing to a restaurant not far away, she said, "Sniff Tilda, it smells so good. Kyle, let's go eat something first." Leah also shouted excitedly, "Great, dinner is ready, such delicious food must be delicious." Kyle looked around and found that the restaurant was very large, and the gate alone was estimated to be 4 meters high. But there were only 4 or 5 tables inside. It was probably past dinner time, so there were no diners inside. Seeing that there were guests, a little girl about the same age as Kyle and the others came over. The little girl was wearing an apron, with 2 ponytails on her head, holding a small notebook in her hand, and asked politely, "3 guests, what would you like to eat?" Kyle looked at the height of the little girl. She was only 10 years old at most. "I don't know if it is illegal to employ child labor in this world." Chapter 18. After looking at the menu, Kyle was too lazy to choose and said directly, "Bring all the food." Ah, the little girl was stunned. It was the first time she saw someone ordering all the food directly. She didn't react for a while. "Guest, the portions of our food are very sufficient. Are you sure you want to order all?" Kyle nodded with certainty and pointed at Leah beside him and said, "Just make it with confidence." This guy is a big eater. Ah, okay, please wait a moment. Seeing Kyle say this, the little girl stopped trying to dissuade him. Many people on the sea are very big eaters, and she has seen many of them. Just recently, she saw a sister who was very big eater. She could eat dozens of people's portions of food by herself. Thinking of making a lot of money again, the little girl immediately ran into the kitchen happily with the menu. After the little girl left, Kyle met Leah's eyes that wanted to eat people, and pounced on her and bit her. Asshole, who do you think can eat it? Look, it's about to eat people. Kyle put his hand on her chin to prevent her from biting. The two of them played for a while. Not long after, the little girl came out with a food cart. She placed the food on the table very skillfully. Smelling the food, Kyle and the other two were eager to eat, picked up the cutlery and started to taste it. Tilda, it's delicious. It's much better than what the chefs at home make. Leah, who had just tasted it, showed an expression of enjoyment. Kyle also picked up a piece of sea beast meat and tasted it slowly. The meat was tender and melted in the mouth, and there was a warm feeling in the stomach. I don't know if it's the problem of the ingredients in this world or the different cooking methods, it's much better than what he ate in his previous life, and he secretly gave a thumbs up. Luli and Leah looked really hungry, and took a piece of barbecue that was almost as big as their heads and bit it. Kyle never understood what kind of meat this was. There was only a thin bone in the middle of a large piece of meat. My father's cooking is famous for its deliciousness in the area. I hope you like it. Seeing that the guests liked it, the little girl smiled happily. Wow, your father is really amazing. This is the first time I have eaten such delicious food. Leah's eyes were full of stars at this moment. Although there is a chef at home, the food he makes can't be compared with the food here. Her father went out to sea a long time ago, let alone cooking for her. The little girl's eyes were full of envy. The little girl was also very happy, as if she was the one being praised. By the way, my name is Leah, I don't know what your name is yet. The little girl was not afraid of strangers. My name is Chunye. I heard from my father that when I was born, it was spring when the leaves sprouted, so I got this name. Kyle and Luli also introduced themselves. After a few times, the three girls became familiar with each other. The two sisters also talked about what they saw along the way and talked about various fun places in Maple Leaf Island. Hearing that they were from Maple Leaf Island, Chunye suddenly became excited. I heard that the maple leaves there are so beautiful. I have always wanted to go and see them. If I lie on the grass and look at the fallen leaves floating overhead, it must be the most beautiful thing in life. She has had a dream since she was a child to visit this beautiful island. Unfortunately, her family does not have the financial resources to allow it. There are also many pirates along the way. It is difficult for ordinary people like her to go to other islands. Leah made a suggestion. Chunyi can go with us. Maple Leaf Island is not far from here. Luli guessed that she was afraid of encountering pirates. Sophia and Uncle Loden are both very powerful, and Kyle is also very powerful. There is no need to be afraid of pirates. Leah's suggestion made Chunyi very excited, but she shook her head when looking at her own shop. Thank you, Leah, but it's a pity that I can't go with you. Why? Leah asked puzzledly. She likes Chunyi, a friend she just met. It will be very hard for Dad to work alone if I'm not here. If we can't pay the taxes, we will be expelled from the island. That's a pity. The two sisters felt very sorry. The friends they just met had things they had to do. They were born in a family in Uo and couldn't understand the lives of ordinary people. They only needed to practice and play every day, and they wouldn't have any worries, but Chunye was different. Her family needed to work hard to save money to ensure a stable life. Kyle stopped Chunye, who was about to leave with the food cart, and asked curiously, "Your family's food is so delicious, why don't you open a store in a crowded place? That way the business will definitely be good." Faced with Kyle's question, the little girl answered honestly, "Taxes will be higher in crowded places, and Dad likes quietness. Too many people will make him very distressed." Kyle didn't know what to say. It was the first time he heard such a willful boss. Then Chunye, can you cook? Kyle was thinking after tasting the food. This kind of delicacy is rare. Since the little girl works here, she probably knows how to cook. If she is invited to the ship, she will have no worries about food and drink in the future. It's probably too early for them to go out to sea, but they can build a good relationship in advance. Chunye raised her head confidently. Of course, my father has praised my cooking for being delicious. Then can you cook a dish for us to try? Of course, don't complain if it's not delicious. Kyle nodded affirmatively. Just cook it with confidence. If it tastes good, we will come again tomorrow. The little girl was immediately full of fighting spirit. Don't worry, customer, I will never let you down. At this time, a man's powerful voice came from the kitchen. Chunyi, don't disturb the guests, come and help. Okay, Dad, the little girl shouted crisply, pushing the dining cart back to the kitchen. The doorbell of the restaurant rang, and several people walked in. Kyle turned his head and saw 2 men and 1 woman, and 1 person whose gender was uncertain. The leader was wearing a dark green cloak and was more than 2 meters tall. Looking back, the tea in Kyle's mouth sprayed out directly. The big face taller than himself, with thick purple lipstick on the lips, long eyelashes with blue eyeshadow, and a height of nearly 4 meters. Kyle shuddered when he saw it. It was like seeing a ghost, and he felt sick immediately. This guy must be the Shemale King. Ivankov is not going away. I didn't feel anything when I watched the anime before, but now I feel like I've been hit by 1,000 points of critical strike when I see the real person. And the big guy who came in later is much taller than Ivankov, with that body shape and that round iconic bear ear hat. Wearing a hood is completely unnecessary. A cadre of the Revolutionary Army, Bartholomew Bear. The pink-haired woman with him should be one of the cadres of the Revolutionary Army, Ginny. Damn, aren't these the 4 members of the Revolutionary Army? It's no wonder that Kyle recognized them at a glance, mainly because these guys are too recognizable. Chapter 19. Needless to say, the leader is the boss of the Revolutionary Army, Monkey D. Dragon. Looking at these people, Kyle secretly looked at them, not understanding why they were here. Seemingly noticing the gazes of Kyle and the other 2, they all looked over, and Ivankov waved his hand. Hee-ha, hello, 3 little cuties. Seeing that creepy face, Luli and Leah dropped the tableware in their hands directly to the ground, and hid behind Kyle in fear. Kyle, this man is so scary. We won't be eaten, Leah stammered in Kyle's ear. Ginny behind him slapped the table and laughed. Eva, you scared the 3 little friends. Kyle showed a stiff smile and covered Leah's mouth with his backhand. Damn, Aunt, you don't think that others can't hear it like this. I just hope this big guy doesn't hold a grudge. Hello, sorry, my 2 sisters are so rude, don't mind what I said just now. It's okay, I scared you. Ivankov looked at Kyle with interest. Hee-ha, boy Tilda, you are very interesting. As an apology, I will tell you a piece of news. Kyle was stunned and immediately became curious. What news? Ivankov pointed to the corner of the alley not far away, and approached Kyle and said, there are 2 people outside looking at you with bad intentions. Hearing this news, Kyle immediately showed a frightened expression. Is it a bad guy? What can we do? We are just simple and ignorant children. Seeing Kyle's exaggerated performance, Ivankov didn't know what to say for a while. I don't know if the little guy in front of him is really scared or fearless. Looking at the 3 people's outfits, each of them carries a sword, and it is a very valuable sword. Maybe these 3 little guys are really capable. At worst, I can just help them when the time comes. Little boy Tilda, come on. After saying that, she returned to her seat. After the few people sat down, Ginny slapped the table and shouted carelessly. Little Chunye, ask your father to make more delicious food, we are almost starving to death. Chunye seemed to know a few people, and jumped with a small notebook to order food. Seeing that a few people were sitting together and chatting without paying attention to them, Luli and Leah sat back to their seats. Chunye put a few freshly prepared meals on the table and said to the two sisters, "Don't be afraid, they are not bad people." Kyle asked curiously, "Do you seem to know each other very well?" Chunye nodded. "They are all very good people. They often come here to eat recently. I was a little scared at first, but when I got familiar with them, I found that they were all very good. The big sister also gave me a lot of snacks." Kyle didn't ask much, he was just curious why he saw the Revolutionary Army here. "I hope nothing will happen during this period." Without thinking too much, Chunyi started to eat heartily. At first, Chunyi didn't believe that the Celtics could finish all the food, until later she realized that she was short of experience. Kyle ate 30 portions of food, Leah ate 10 portions of food, and Luli ate 5 portions of food. The speed of cooking in the kitchen could not keep up with the speed of Kyle and his friends, not to mention that there was a table of guests on the side. After sending Kyle and his friends away, Chunyi held a thick stack of Baileys in his hand, and his eyes were full of stars. A full 100,000. Normally, there is not so much income in a day. When I thought that 3 guests would come tomorrow, I became happy instantly. After Kyle and his friends left, the Revolutionary Army also talked at ease. Dragon knocked on the table and said, "Our power is still too small now, and we need to invite more like-minded partners. Only by carrying out a thorough revolution and overthrowing the rule of the world government and the celestial dragons can we prevent more tragedies from happening." Several people listened carefully. When they heard about the celestial dragons, Ginny and Big Bear trembled. They were once slaves of the celestial dragons, and they knew the harm these guys who claimed to be gods had done to the world. That's why they started to inquire when they learned about Dragon's self-guard army, and they happened to catch up with the birth of the Revolutionary Army. Drager originally thought that the purpose of establishing the self-guard army was just to fight against the tyranny of the celestial dragons and the kings of various countries, and to protect those innocent civilians from being harmed. But the O'Hara incident not long ago made Dragon realize that the purpose of the self-guard army was just to quench thirst with poison, and it could not change anything at all. This world needs a thorough change. Only by overthrowing the world government and the celestial dragons can this world usher in the hope of a new life. However, the Revolutionary Army was just established not long ago, and there are not many members, and various aspects they are all extremely lacking. He plans to develop in the 4 seas first, looking for like-minded partners, and at the same time liberate those who are in distress. Then lead these people to overthrow the world government. Dorag looked at the few people again. "I suggest setting up a base in the 4 seas first, and then appointing a military commander. For the East China Sea, let Ginny be the military commander. Do you have any other suggestions?" Ginny paused while eating meat, and pointed at herself uncertainly. "Boss, you want me to be the military commander?" Dorag nodded to show his certainty. "You are good at intelligence gathering, and your strength is not weak. There is basically no danger in the East China Sea. Okay, since you have joined the Revolutionary Army with Bear Cub, I will definitely work hard with everyone." Ginny agreed generously. She was also willing to follow Bear Cub to save those civilians in distress. None of them had any objections, and the matter was finalized. "Will I not be able to see Bear Cub often in the future?" Ginny looked at Big Bear with reluctance in her eyes. "I'm still thinking about traveling together in the future." Big Bear smiled and reached out to wipe the oil stains from the corners of her mouth. "It's okay, I will come to see you often." No one looked at the two people. Ivankov looked at Dorag and said, "The 3 little cuties just now seem to be not simple, should we help them?" Dorag shook his head and looked out the window with interest. "We don't need to do anything, they can solve it themselves. Especially the little boy in the lead, that momentum is not what he should have at this age." The 3 people immediately became interested. Ginny's mouth was full of food, and she said vaguely, "Then boss, do you want to invite him to join the organization?" Big Bear looked at Ginny lovingly and put a big chicken leg in front of him on her plate. Let's observe for a while. The Navy has noticed us recently, so it's better to be careful. Dorag nodded and agreed with Big Bear's statement. Ginny will be staying here anyway, so just keep an eye on him. Got it, boss. Then let's see what this little guy can do. Dorag pointed out the window. The three of them also watched everything that happened outside the window. Chapter 20. After dinner, Kyle and the other two planned to walk around to digest the food. It was still early and there were still many places to go. As soon as they walked out of the door, Leah frowned and said unhappily, "Why are those two annoying guys still here? Kyle, do you want to find a place where no one is?" She even made a gesture of wiping her neck while saying this. Kyle nodded, wanting to see what the two men were going to do. At this moment, the big man and the thin man walked towards Kyle and the other two with a smile. "Little guys, come with us. We'll take you to an interesting place." The big man spoke first, playing with a knife in his hand. They had been paying attention to these three children for a long time. They knew they were children from rich families by their clothes. Not only were they rich, but they also looked good. If they collected money and sold it to the Employment Security Office, the two brothers would not have to worry about food and drink for several months. To be on the safe side, they followed all the way, fearing that there were guards following them in secret. As a result, they found that there were only 3 of them, without any guards. I don't know whether they are brave or fearless. But no matter how you look at them, they are 3 children. Although they carry swords, he doesn't think such young children have any strength. Kyle asked with interest, "Oh, Uncle, where are you taking us?" The thin man also held a knife and smiled with an ambiguous smile. "Kid, it's not good to know too much. If you know what's good for you, follow us, otherwise." Kyle spread his hands and sighed helplessly. "If you don't tell me where you are going, I won't follow you." "That's not up to you." The thin man said no more. Kyle and the other two spent too much time eating. If they were not afraid of attracting too much attention, they would not have waited outside for an hour. At this moment, he didn't want to say more. He wanted to finish the work as soon as possible, so he reached out and wanted to grab Kyle first. "Second brother, catch those 2 girls, don't let them run away. This kind of stuff is worth a lot of money. The nobles here like it very much." "Don't worry, big brother." The big man felt that his big brother was looking down on him. After all, they were well-known human traffickers in this area, and they couldn't catch 2 little girls. Kyle, who was originally smiling, suddenly looked cold. He looked at the thin man in front of him and said, "From what you said, are you human traffickers?" The thin man looked at Kyle's cold eyes and felt panic, as if he was stared at by a beast. It took a while to come back to his senses, secretly cursing himself for being scared by a child, and immediately became fierce. "Damn it, boy, since you know, then follow us obediently, don't let the master use force." After getting confirmation, Kyle didn't say anything more, and stretched out his hand to stop Leah and Luli, who had already wiped out the long sword and wanted to take action. The sisters were not afraid, although they had never killed anyone with their own hands. "But I have seen a lot of fighting. I have no sympathy for the bad guys who want to sell them." Kyle whispered, "Killing such people will only dirty your hands." Snap. Kyle snapped his fingers lightly, and the 2 figures who were about to rush up suddenly stopped, and then confusion appeared in their eyes. Then there was a look of fear. They suddenly found that their bodies could not move, and they wanted to speak but couldn't open their mouths. They couldn't move their eyes at all. "I don't know what happened, but I can be sure that it must be related to the boy in front of me." Kyle ignored it and took the 2 sisters away. The people in the restaurant were confused. Ivankov guessed. "Hee-ha, that boy should be a devil fruit user, and his ability is probably to freeze the body or something like that." Ginny nodded, and said with some regret, "After all, they are just children. They didn't attack the enemy, they just froze the enemy and left." I guess these two will go for revenge after they leave. Drag shook his head. He just felt a terrible killing intent from the boy. People with such killing intent will not be merciful to the enemy. Several people were still discussing Kyle's approach. The two people outside the door were horrified to find that their bodies began to move involuntarily. Each of them raised the dagger in his hand and aimed at each other, as if guessing what would happen next. The two people kept struggling, but to no avail. The daggers of both sides easily pierced each other's eyes, ears, and mouths. This scene also attracted many passers-by, all of whom looked at the two people who were hurting each other in surprise. Many people knew these two brothers, who were famous slave traders nearby. Seeing the two notorious people suddenly fighting to the death, the onlookers cheered. They also began to speculate what happened between the two people, why they had such a big hatred that they would rather get hurt than stab each other. The two men's actions were not over yet. In the absence of perspective, they still accurately stabbed the dagger into each other's body. And the force was controlled just right, not immediately fatal. The bloody scene made many passers-by unable to bear to look directly, and some people even squatted in the corner and began to vomit. The 4 members of the Revolutionary Army in the restaurant stared at all this in a daze. It took a long time for Ginny to swallow her saliva, and the meat in her mouth was no longer fragrant. What a kind person, this is the first time I have seen such a scene. Ivankov's face also became solemn. What a terrible boy. Walking through the quiet streets, the crowd became lively again. Kyle held the two sisters in one hand, and Leah licked the ice cream in her hand, mumbling in her mouth. Kyle, why don't you kill those two bastards? Human traffickers are the most hateful. This was the first time she saw human traffickers. She used to hear her mother say how hateful human traffickers were. When Leah thought that if she was caught, she would never see her family again, she was furious. If Kyle hadn't stopped her, she would have wanted to kill them. Stupid Leah, how could Kyle let those two go? Leah was stunned and looked at Luli strangely. How do you know? They were fine after we left just now. Seeing that Leah still didn't understand, Luli instantly became proud. She, as a sister, was indeed the smartest. She patiently explained. You are stupid. If we really kill those two guys on the spot, we will probably get into trouble. There are obviously other people behind them, but what happens to them after we leave has nothing to do with us. Luli is right. Kyle is very satisfied with this girl. Although she is not very old, she sees things very thoroughly. I bought another ice cream on the roadside and put it in Luli's hand. Our Luli is the smartest, this is a reward. Thank you, Kyle. Luli enjoyed the compliment and looked at Leah proudly with narrowed eyes. Looking at her sister who was showing off, Leah felt that she was saying that she was stupid, and she hummed unhappily. Her big eyes rolled around, and she took a bite of Luli's ice cream when she was not paying attention. She stared blankly at the empty wrapping paper in her hand, and then Luli rushed towards Leah with her teeth and claws bared. You damned guy. The ice cream is so delicious. Leah hid directly behind Kyle, and did not forget to taunt while running.